Fill her up.
You're listening to the Gas Digital Network.
Conceive, believe, achieve. Shut the f*** up.
You're listening to Believe You Me with Michael the Count Bisping.
You know my name yet?
And Anthony Lionheart Smith.
Anthony Smith will be with us in a minute. Ladies and gentlemen, do not adjust your screens. Anthony Smith has not got way better looking, right? Hasn't aged a few years and lost a few pounds. Of course, we are joined by the one, the only, the play-by-play, the face of MMA play-by-play, the one and only Jon Anik.
I'm doing well. What an absolute pleasure to be here with you on the award-winning Believe You Me podcast, the Mixed Martial Arts Analyst of the Year. Great to be with you, you know. And I know I'm going to see you pretty soon, but it's nice to see your shining face on StreamYard, at least today.
Well, thank you, sir. We're just waiting for Anthony. He's training, obviously. He's one part of that main event going down. Well, potentially. So he's training. So he's just setting up as we speak. He couldn't get into the Airbnb and things like that. So we'll just chew the fat.
Let's do it.
For a few minutes. Christmas, my friend. You know, how was the break?
It was nice. You know, I think a lot of our American viewers sort of understand that since the UFC did that television deal with ESPN, that we have this little 3 or 4 week respite around the college football bowl season. And for guys like you and me, I know your schedule is breakneck no matter the year, going to Bulgaria, filming movies and everything else. But for me, bro, doing 25 UFC events a year, to get this little 3 or 4 week respite was really a blessing in disguise. I feel rejuvenated, and I'm actually excited to go to Brazil, which isn't something that I was saying, 5 or 6 years ago when I was going there 6 or 7 times a year. So
yeah, no, exactly. It's weird, isn't it? Because, when you say to average people, I'm going down to Brazil, they go, whoa, that's awesome. It's like, no, bro. And there's nothing against Brazil. It's like a lot of these places, it isn't a vacation. But just back to what you say, I mean, it's very kind of you to say that I'm flying around doing movies. That's not the case. It's one every blue moon. But the break, the downtime, it was nice. But I am itching to get back. I'm itching to watch some fights.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. What do you do? I mean, you like all sports, though, John. I'm a knucklehead. I only like fights.
Right. Well, yeah, the flip side, obviously, is that when I am sitting around on a Saturday night, I, like the rest of the fan base, is jonesing for a UFC live event, right? I find myself paying maybe more attention to boxing. But yeah, certainly for me, smack dab in the middle of the NFL season, I have some distractions. I also, have a bunch of dependents flying around. Obviously, like you, I have 3 kids, so that has kept me busy. We went up to Connecticut, New York for a little bit and experienced the cold weather and saw my wife's family. But yeah, man, I think when you get into this sort of pattern where you're watching the UFC 42 of 52 Saturday nights, and then there are 4 consecutive dark Saturday nights. Yeah, man, I don't necessarily know what to do with myself either.
Yeah, exactly. Brian's just saying, can you turn it down just a little?
Yeah.
And just so we can be clear, Jon Anik is always the professional. We just started. It was low, and John's like, I don't want to turn it up too much because I'm going to peak and it's going to distort. And we're like, no, it's fine. But of course, John was correct. We're just trying to, I tell you what, we'll go through some of the non-MMA stuff just while we wait for Anthony to join us and while we get into it. I wanted to save a few of these, but about Harrington, do you know Harrington, John? Have you ever met Harrington?
Your producer. I follow him on social media, but I don't know that we've actually formally met it.
Well, I apologize for his presence on social media. He tries far too hard. He's always trying to fight people. He thinks he's a fighter. But Harrington, always a pleasure to have you on here, buddy. Throw something at us, my friend.
Okay. Actually, I just want to point out, we did meet at UFC 2. We met at UFC at MSG. And I told you I really enjoy every time you're on the Ryan Russillo podcast. You're the man, dude.
Oh, okay. Now I can make the connection. My man.
What an asshole, John. You didn't have to do that. You didn't have to say, you know what, we've actually met before. We had a conversation. You met my kids. You came to my house for dinner. And you forget me. You could have just let that one go, but you had to throw a little shade, Harrington.
I'm just letting people know how forgettable I really am. So check this out, guys. A man from Ecuador, he legally changed his gender, right? Not for the reason you may be thinking. The country has a law in place where if a divorce settlement is going on, the custody of the child will always revert back to the mother. So this guy changed his gender so that he too can be the mother of his daughter and get custody while they're figuring it out in the courts. What do you guys think of that?
Right. John, I just want to apologize. Right. I meant throw us a nice little light-hearted topic, not
right.
potentially one that might be filled with minefields, and you don't want to say the wrong thing. Harrington, we did not discuss that. Okay, it's in the notes, but that's the first one that you throw. I mean, we've got London named the City of the Year. What else have we got? We've got all kinds of easy low ball stuff where we're not potentially going to offend the trans community, and you know what I mean. We're going to pretend that bit didn't happen. Throw us that story, Harrington. Number 5, because John's a world traveler. He can chime in on this one.
Certainly. And I mean, you guys have been to a bunch of these cities just for your UFC duties over the last year. London was ranked, according to worldsbestcities.com, as the best city for 2023. The 11 million population city is now reaching pre-COVID capacity numbers again, and London is apparently alive. It's the #1 place to visit 2023.
And can I just throw in, I think that was the last 7 years in a row as well, John. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that London's the best city in the world. It's a bloody great city, and I'm biased, and I love it. But you do travel the world, John. Yeah. You know, we are very lucky in that regard. Yeah. The traveling, you know, how do you find that? And what would be your favorite city on planet Earth?
By the way, Clitheroe coming in at number 37 in 2000.
Wow. Clitheroe, stand up to quote John.
So candidly for me, like I was the homesick camper growing up, right? I didn't want to go to overnight camp and be away from my parents for 7 weeks. So when I started with the UFC, it was a little bit of an adjustment, being away 100 nights a year. And even now, as I get ready to go to Perth and be away from my kids for a week, it's not ideal for me, at least in terms of the way that I am wired in terms of my DNA. So it has been an adjustment for me. Obviously, you're right. We have had the chance to sort of explore the world on somebody else's dime, and oftentimes the nature of our jobs as announcers is such that we're not necessarily out socializing as much as maybe we would like to be. But I love Australia, obviously, and I know you can speak to that. The last time I called a fight in England was 2013. Now, I did go over to see your fight against Anderson Silva in 2016. I'm very thankful I was in the building, but I only
let me guess
fight show.
Let me guess the fight that you called 2013. I'm gonna say Mark Munoz, Lyoto Machida in Manchester.
Yes, and it was, I believe, Henan Barrow and Michael McDonald, if I'm not mistaken, for an interim bantamweight championship at some point in time.
Right.
But obviously, with this March 18th show beckoning, that'll be the first time, if I get the call, to call a UFC fight in front of an English crowd for being 10 years, bro. That's pretty special for me. So
that is amazing. 10 years. 10 years, you know, what am I now? I think I just started my 4th, which I'm pretty proud of that. That is going to be an incredible fight card, March 18th. Obviously, we haven't had the announcement yet. I mean, if you know anything official from behind the scenes, I don't expect you to divulge it. But what do you know, Josh?
Well, I know Bilal Muhammad was on Believe You Me recently, and if he was in line to be getting that title shot on March 18th, I feel like I would know something, right? He hosts a podcast with my twin brother. I consider Bilal to be family, right?
Yeah.
I do read into manager Ali Abdelaziz's tweet maybe more than I should when he says everybody needs to relax about the Kamaru Usman injuries. He's going to make the walk. He's going to fight Leon. So obviously, given the nature of that result, Leon Edwards against Kamaru Usman last August, they had to run this one back right away, right? Like when you look at Israel Adesanya and Alex Pineda, I think that'll be an immediate rematch too, but I don't think they need to absolutely unequivocally strike right now. Whereas with Leon Edwards and Kamaru Usman, I think you got to do that fight right now. So I remain cautiously optimistic that that is going to be the fight March 18th, but I don't have to tell you, we're about 9-10 weeks out right now. So,
and that is the only thing that gives me a kind of a seed of doubt. I mean, Ali's coming out, he's putting all those flames he's putting those flames out. But we're not too far away, and it hasn't been announced. I mean, the event has, but the main event hasn't. And Kamaru, I haven't seen it, but he's walking around with kind of a brace over his hand, looking like he had surgery. And Kamaru being the pound-for-pound number 1, formerly, being the long-time champion, people were talking about him taking George St. Pierre's throne as the greatest welterweight of all time, potentially the GOAT one day, rushing back into that after getting knocked out with potentially a sore hand. That wouldn't sound like a smart move. And by the way, I'm not trying to shit on that fight because I hope it happens so big, but I don't know. I think all of us having a seed of doubt or a shred of doubt or whatever the goddamn expression that the stupid brain can't think of is, I think is warranted.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I know Ali wants people like me to stop with the rumor and the conjecture, right? But we have heard that Kamaru Usman, in terms of his knees, maybe aren't optimally healthy. So I don't know. We got to see how it plays out. But I certainly don't have to tell you. It takes a very special circumstance and fighter for us to do a pay-per-view in the United Kingdom. And seemingly we have that right now. Obviously, we had it with you and Dan Henderson. That was the last time we did a pay-per-view over there. I wasn't even the number one guy. So needless to say, man, I'm hoping that it all aligns for March 18th. I find it hard to believe that you do Leon Edwards and, Bilal Muhammad or even Jorge Masvidal as the main event March 18th, but I guess we'll find out.
Who was the play-by-play guy for that one? I know Brian Goldberg. Was he really?
Yep. It was last year, I believe.
Yeah, I was going to say it must have been one of his last ones. Oh, well. Never mind. Well, fingers crossed that happens. The thing is for Leon, I was thinking about this the other day. I think like the top 5 in that division, for the most part, I think they're all very, very strong grapplers. So he kind of stands out as the only striker. You've got Burns, Hamzat, Kamaru, Bilal, Luke. He's kind of a striker. He's a bit more well-rounded. So yeah, it's a tough road ahead. Even if it's not Kamaru, there's some very, very strong contenders there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Colby Covington is going to all of a sudden reemerge and find himself in a championship setting. I don't think it's going to be Khamzat Chimaev and Leon Edwards, because I think that not only would Khamzat be probably about a 4 or 5 to 1 favorite, but I do think the promotion is going to strategically try to preserve the immediate rematch between Kamaru Usman and Leon Edwards. And certainly, as Chael Sonnen and others have articulated, if you're Leon Edwards, maybe try to find the guy that you think you can beat among the names that are presented. And again, I don't think it's going to be Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, but do I think that's a more winnable fight for Leon Edwards than some of the grapplers out there? I do. So
yeah, for sure.
We'll see what happens.
And I'll be honest, Wonderboy versus Leon, take my money, by the way.
Oh, yes.
Could you imagine that fight? That would be sensational. But still, we shall wait and see. Did you hear the news, John, that the GOAT, the Gloat, the Eagle, the undefeated. I'm not talking about you, Mr. I'm late to bloody everything, Anthony Smith. All right, we'll get to that in a minute, John. Anthony, what's going on, brother? How are you, man?
I'm a partial dead body, man. These people, these killers in Denver are just, I'm like fresh meat, man. I don't know what happened. I was such a nice guy to all those youngsters, and now they're kicking my ass.
Oh, shit. So who you training with? Anyone we know?
Yeah, I've been with Dustin Jacoby and Cody Brundage a bunch lately. Those guys are on fire, man. They're ready. They're just itching for short notice opportunities, so they're ready to go.
Hey, John, I was saying, and I say it every show, I mean, what a guy. And I'm not blowing smoke up your ass, Anthony. To be in there, obviously, as you say, you're getting your ass kicked. We all know how hard it is to prepare for a fight. And there's other people that have done this before as well, but still, it's the first time I've known somebody personally, to be going through those rigors, the mental and the physical toughness of a training camp, when you might not even have the fight. That speaks a lot about your character, Anthony.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit unfair for me, maybe compared to other people, because I'm still fighting in March if the title fight goes ahead like I suspect that it probably will. So we're still targeting that March 11th date. I think there's just a couple other things that got to fall into place. Obviously, we got our eyes super close on that Johnny Walker-Paul Craig fight. And just kind of the way the division is shaking out. We'll see what happens in the title fight. One of those guys want to turn around quick. I might be the only guy left.
Well, just so you know, from the BT Sport, I had to just do it today. I had to predict all the champions this time next year. And in light heavyweight, I predicted Anthony Smith.
There we go.
No, but I thought I have to. Or so I'm just going to get shit
you have to. You have to.
Anyway, no offense, Anthony. We were supposed to do a 30-minute segment at the start, and then John comes in and we talk all about John. Okay, so I'm sorry you missed that part. Jon Anik, back to you, sir. Khabib, should I say Habib, has just called it a day completely, not from only competing in the sport, but coaching for the most part. I believe in Dagestan, localized, he's still going to be involved, but he's done traveling the world. It kind of ties into what we were talking about a second ago. All the miles in the air, etc., staying in hotels. He's walked away from the sport. What is your comments on that, John?
Well, he took one look at that Perth itinerary and he said, you know what, I'm not going to Western Australia, right? I mean, I'm telling you, man, I get that Perth itinerary. It gives me fucking anxiety for months, right? Now, I think it remains to be seen as to whether or not Khabib Nurmagomedov would selectively corner one of his cousins or Islam Makhachev at a championship setting, right? He just cornered Belal Muhammad for that win over Sean Brady, and Belal was sort of expectant that now he was going to maybe have Khabib moving forward. So would he selectively corner a couple fighters here or there? I don't know. I still think he has value tremendously on fight night. But if you're not there for 8 or 10 weeks prior, how does that affect the corner dynamic? I mean, there are a lot of unknowns that I think Khabib will answer in the weeks to come. I think, Anthony, we probably get our first answer in Perth as to whether or not he's actually there for Islam's first title defense.
Yeah, that was going to be my question to you, because you see a lot of the stuff that even me as an analyst, I don't get to see. I don't get to see how they interact with each other during the fighter meetings and the meetings they have with the broadcasting crew. I don't get to see all that stuff. So my question was going to be, do you really think that he's going to not go to Perth? And because he has so many plans for Islam, he talked about how many title defenses he wanted him to have, and when he wanted him to retire, he almost seemingly had the rest of Islam's career kind of planned out for him. It seems very odd that he would step away, at least from that individual fighter. And like you said, maybe his, some family members, some cousins and stuff like that.
Halfway through a training camp.
Right.
Yeah. If I was Islam, I would say this is number one bullshit. Yeah. No, but what do you think of that, John?
Yeah, no, I really think that for Islam, obviously Javier Mendez has been a unifying force for that team, and I don't think that Islam's corner is going to be all that adversely affected, at least for this Volkanovski fight, if Khabib Nurmagomedov is not there. But I think for a lot of us, and I could speak to it probably to a lesser extent than you guys as the professional athletes, but a lot of us are away and make a lot of familial sacrifices to do what we do. And even for me, talking to my wife, like I'm in New Orleans for some voiceover work right now, and it's not even a UFC live event, and I'm essentially gone all week. A lot of us that provide for our families while being away have a lot of hard conversations, and sometimes they don't just happen, when your contract is up, So I think that's part of the pull for Khabib. What does it mean for his promotion, right? This man has his own promotion as well that he's the face of. So I don't know. Right now, you guys know me as a betting man. I do think he'll be in Islam's corner in Perth, but
so do I.
If I see what's out there right now, it doesn't necessarily seem like he's committed to that at all.
Yeah, I mean, I would have thought that he'll show up and maybe say, look, this is the last one, though. But I get it. I mean, everything that you just said, John, we all know, we're all fathers. We all have crazy schedules, traveling all over the world, and people at home sitting there listening to this map go, oh, cry me a fucking river, But it's a strain. It's hard, I'm always explaining to Lucas, he's my youngest. He's like, Dad, how long are you going to be gone for? And you can see the disappointment in his eye and things like that. So I've got to say, I really respect Khabib for doing this, because he's worshipped all over the world. People love the man. He's made a lot of money. He's got the fame. He's got the records. He's known as the GOAT to some people. I mean, what more can you do? And rather than walk or travel planet Earth, and pampering his ego and people bowing down to him, he's going to stay in that little village, Mahachkala, I think it's called, and you'll get me on the pronunciation, John. Mahachkala in Dagestan, and said, no,
Mahachkala, yes.
Mahachkala. All right. And just enough. Mahachkala. No, but he's going to forfeit all that to be present for his family. And I think, as a man, as a father and a husband, I think that's incredible.
Yeah, and I also think, and you guys, again, can speak to this better than I can, but man, did everybody want a fucking piece of that guy. Right now, all of a sudden, he became omnipresent at a lot of these UFC live events since his retirement, whether it's being there for one of his cousins, Abubakar, or being there for Islam. And Anthony, obviously you're there as an analyst, like everybody wants a piece of this guy. And I just think at some point the noise maybe for him just got to be too much. And he's thinking, you know what, I retired and now there's like even more noise than there was before.
Yeah, I think there is something to that, John, to be honest with you. That even going into my last fight, I kind of battling injuries a little bit, so I kind of was out of the conversation of people, I guess, talking shit, like wanting to fight and always calling you out and always have something to say. And once you're out of it for a little while, and then you come back and then you fight, and it's so loud, and I think that's a really good point that gets missed. It's someone's constantly wanting to kick your ass, and it seemingly is worse now that he's been retired than it was before, because there wasn't very many people that were screaming for a Khabib fight while he was still actively competing, and lots of people want to now that it's unlikely.
Yeah. There's Conor McGregor's always talking crap about him, always calling him out. Khabib lives rent-free in his head. John, we're going to ask you a lot of questions, and we got a lot of Twitter questions as well, but we're going to go through a couple of the topics, if you don't mind, if you have the time. Because I'm sure people want to hear all about how you got involved and then started in what you do for a living. But I want to ask you both, did you two drink a lot of energy drinks when you were younger or throughout your life, or do you still do that to this day?
Yes.
Yeah?
A lot.
John, what do you say?
I try not to during camp.
So when Brian Stam was my broadcast partner, I was like a monster, sugar-free Monster Energy drink fiend. I was drinking like 2 a show. I don't do it as much right now. Occasionally I'll have a Monster, especially during a broadcast if I'm feeling it a little bit. But yeah, for the most part, I try to steer clear. I do like the buzz, though. You know that.
Well, this is all making a lot of sense to me, guys. Harrington, come on and pray tell. Explain. Oh, well done, Brian.
That is
No, Harrington, just explain. Though.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Apparently some research has come out and says that energy drinks are the leading cause of hair loss.
So it turns out, that you do have a way more likely chance to lose your hair if you are imbibing energy drinks. And then also, it's specifically any kind of fizzy drink, right? So it's the caffeine in there and just the fizziness. So like any kind of seltzers, sodas, both of those things combined really, really do a damage on your hair follicle.
I call bullshit, to be honest, because I'm not the healthiest guy on planet Earth, you know what I mean? But what do you say to that, guys?
Well, I mean, for Anthony Smith, I mean, it looks like maybe his hair's got a little recession going on right now.
It's a lot. It's not great. I'm a little offended, to be honest, that Jon Anik was thrown into this group. Guys, Jon Anik's hairline is fire. He just chooses to
have a full head of hair.
It is great. Like, if you see his brother has beautiful hair. So yeah, Jon chooses to be a part of this club, and I'm not sure that we should allow it anymore.
Well, I grew my hair out once in my 11 years with the UFC, and I felt like I looked like a fucking clown. I mean, you can go back and look at the footage of me interviewing Mark Munoz, my hair patted down from my headset. No, yes, many of you know I have an identical twin brother. He hasn't had a haircut since 2018. It goes down to his ass. Yeah, I don't think it looks particularly good, but I don't know. I've been shaving my head, having a short haircut since I was like 14 years old. At the end of the day, honestly, I'm just trying to be as confident as possible in my own skin. That's why I had a mustache for 2 years, however wayward a decision that was. And I'm confident with a bald head, and I'm going to go shave it as soon as we're off the air, probably.
Yeah, you know what, to be honest, I did the same thing. And there's your bro. By the way, what a guy. What a guy. Every time I see him, always have the best interactions with him. I did the same thing. I think when I was from about 15, I was shaving my head all the time. And then I think it was when I got knocked out against Dan Henderson at UFC 100. I'm like, I'm going to change this look. I'm going to change the walkout music. I'm going to change the hairstyle. And as it turns out, I've still got one. So anyway, enough of that. Anthony, what's going on in your world, buddy?
Man, nothing really.
The training.
The training, a lot of traveling and stuff. And then, I'm home every weekend from training camp. And since 2017, I've never missed a weekend home during training camp. So I fly out Friday night. I fly back in Monday morning. I was really thinking about, the podcast as I was going through the airport this morning. I have become such a miserable piece of shit going through the airport because I'm so efficient because I just do it so much that I have my way. Like, I can't travel with my family either. It just drives me absolutely crazy because they fuck up my whole system. But
fuck up my whole system. How dare they be with you?
They fuck up my whole system. But like, just I've been like in a shit mood from the airport all day today. Like, people are absolutely miserable here. Sometimes it drives me. Just people in the lines are just complaining like they've never flown before. Maybe some of them haven't. Maybe they're just not used to it. But you just listen to them bitch, and then they're on the plane and they're complaining, and there's always the one drunk guy, and you're like, bro, it's 6 a.m. What are we doing here? So that's my day today, is just bitching about people on the plane. It's just, or in the airport in general.
How do you find the traveling job?
Yeah, I mean, I'm stoned half my life, but I'm walking through the Miami airport this morning, and I'm thinking, like, does anybody exercise anymore? Is anybody nice to each other anymore? Now, certainly there are certain pockets of our country, right? Like, I'm in New Orleans right now, and I think Southern hospitality is like a real thing, right? I can't profess to you how nice they were to me when I just checked in at the hotel, when I landed at the airport here in New Orleans. But you go to New York or Los Angeles, right, which is a common entry point for internationals coming to our country for the first time. everybody's an asshole.
Major
Totally.
asshole.
Totally.
Certainly immigration as well. Being a non-American, because it's very confusing sometimes to find the right line that you got to go into, whether you got a green card or an ESTA or whatever the documentation that you have, and you ask a question, and you get screamed at, you get spoken to like a criminal. Granted, I am a criminal, but it's not a good look. But still, Harrington, we had one frustrated customer on a plane recently, didn't we? That perhaps you can tell us all about if you're there.
I am here. So a Wells Fargo executive is currently serving 14 days in jail in India because during his business class flight, he apparently was that guy who was super drunk at 6 a.m. and decided to urinate on another passenger. He is facing a possible 3 years in jail if convicted of breaking India's modesty laws.
Well, piss on people in India. What do you expect?
We actually had a situation, I'm not going to name any names, but in our UFC family in which something very similar happened. So, got to keep your Johnson in your drawers when you're drinking on airplanes. But yeah, I mean, I don't drink a lot on planes. I black out pretty easily. So I don't drink too much on airplanes, maybe one or two. But I don't want to be up in the air, browning out, pissing off.
I remember I landed in Brazil. I think it was the last show before COVID kicked in, the lockdowns and everything. I think it was Oliveira versus Ferguson. I'm not sure. Kevin Lee. Thank you very much, John. Well done. And I remember we landed, and there was a few execs in the line in front of me, and I'm just woke up, and I'm like, and then they're like, "You okay, Mike?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good. You go, all right, because you had a bit of an episode on the plane." I'm like, well, what do you mean? They're like, "You were on your feet, you were screaming and shouting, pop, pop, pop." I'm like, "No, I wasn't. They went, "Mike, you were. I'm like, and then next minute, someone else is like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Oh, fuck's sake." Because I do this a lot. When I pass out, when I'm fully asleep, I'm often, shouting obscenities and whatnot. And
Are you
I'm
a sleepwalker?
I'm not a sleepwalker. I'm asleep, pissing
Screamer.
wardrobe. I'm asleep, piss on the couch. I'm asleep, like run. I might not have told you, John, like a couple of Christmases ago, I ran down the stairs naked Christmas morning, came to on the neighbor's fence wall, naked, completely naked, like 5 a.m. I bloodied all my knees up. So, oh God. Anyway, John.
You should probably get that looked at.
Yeah, no, some guy, because I told those stories on the Joe Rogan podcast, and then I had some smart ass going on about how it's a precursor to CTE. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm sharp as hell.
Maybe.
All right, let's talk about Manscaped. You know the deal. Listen, it's the best in the world below the waist men's group. Okay, you know what I'm talking about. The Franken Beans, the meat and two veg, the crown jewels, the balls and the penis. Whatever it is, there's pubic hair surrounding them and on them. And it's got to be trimmed. It's got to be kept looking nice. It's got to be buff. It's got to be smooth. It's got to be a nice surface. Or maybe that's not the look that you want. Fortunately, with the Manscaped 4.0, you can design it however you want it. You want a Brazilian? That's about the other one that I know. But if you want some jazzy style, feel free. Jazz it up. Or if you want to go bold as a coot, go for it. Right? Whatever you want to do. Manscaped is the best, and the reason being it has the skin-safe technology, okay? You know the deal by now because we talk about it all the time. Generally, you might get a little nicking, a little cutting, a little bleeding, and that is the last thing you want on your most sensitive area. 4.0 is what's available. That's because it's better than the 3, the 2, and the 1, right? It's the best version yet. And also, Manscaped have a couple of packages available for you as well. They have the Performance Package, where you get the Lawnmower 4.0, you get the body trimmer, and you get the weed whacker for the ear hair, the nose hair. You also get Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant, keep them smelling good, and the Crop Reviver Ball Toner. Okay, that's the Performance Package. They've also got the Platinum Package, which has everything I just mentioned from the Performance Package, plus the Ultra Premium Body Wash, the Ultra Premium 2-in-1 shampoo and conditioner. Come on, why take 2 bottles into the shower? And also the Ultra Premium Deodorant. All of Manscaped shower gear is sulfate-free, vegan, and made to have your skin feeling hydrated and smelling fresh. They also got nail clippers, the new body buffer, and over a dozen other products that you could use in your bathroom. Step up your grooming game, okay? Or maybe just start grooming. I guarantee a lot of you don't do anything like that. Step it up, start doing it, whatever you want to do. Wash your hair, keep it vegan, tone your balls, spray deodorant, whatever you do, all those things, get it from manscaped.com. Use the code Bisping. You're going to get 20% off and free shipping. We all want to save money. Manscaped.com. Use the code Bisping. 20% off, free shipping. John, we were talking right before the new year about 3 fights that you would love to see happen next year and 3 fights that need to happen. So we're going to throw that to you, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot right there and then. But yeah, in your opinion, what are 3 fights that need to be made this year?
Well, I want to start with Zhang Weili and Valentina Shevchenko. Now, certainly there appear to be some rumblings for a third meeting between Valentina Shevchenko and Amanda Nunes. And it seems as though Valentina now has an appetite for that fight, whereas 18 months ago she didn't necessarily have Nunes on her radar. And certainly the strawweight division that Zhang Weili now rules is drunk with possible contenders and matchups for her. But if you're asking me for dream fights, I want to see Valentina Shevchenko challenged. And with respect to Tyler Santos and Aaron Blanchfield, Casey O'Neill, and everybody else, I think that's a super fight. I would also say Khamzat Chimaev versus Colby Covington has been my dream fight since like the end of 2020, Mike, when we did that year-end show and we were all offering up our dream fight. So I want to see how Colby handles that challenge and vice versa. And then, of course, John Jones and Francis Ngannou, right? I mean, John Jones has been teasing a move to the UFC heavyweight division since I had 0 kids. I now have 3, and some of them are double digits in age, So I want to see that fight, probably a little bit of a cop-out, but the magnitude of that fight obviously is not lost on me. So those are 3 fights that are on the tip of my tongue, and I'm not sure we get any one of them, but we can hope.
You don't think we'll get any? You're not sure that we'll get any of them? See,
Well, Jones and Ngannou, when I started hearing people say March 4th, that's 7 weeks away, I mean, right. I'm hopeful, but I don't know.
See, I actually, like, as you were saying those, I think all of those are possibilities for sure. I just feel like the weight class, like the size difference between Valentina Shevchenko and Amanda Nunes at this point is just, it just seems like a lot. It just seems like a lot because Valentina, she's so lean, and she, at one point, when I was breaking down Valentina's fights and going back and seeing her at 135, the difference in her body it's just, she looks like a totally different person. It just seems unrealistic that someone who could fight at 145 would still and be competitive with someone as big and strong as Cyborg and do what she did to someone like Cyborg. Yeah. To fight Valentina at this point seems a little bit unrealistic. And maybe it is. Valentina's a gangster, who knows? But I think all of those are pretty likely. I really like the Zhang Weili Valentina fight. I think that that's probably the most intriguing one. That's the one that I feel like I'm not sure what happens. Like the John Jones Francis Ngannou fight, I've been unequivocal in my breakdown of that fight. I think John Jones cruises to a decision without a mark on his face.
Why a decision?
I mean, if you're a smart guy, which John is, he makes really good decisions. He manages risk to reward very, very well. As he's getting older, I think in his last couple fights, we've seen him manage, I guess, heavier on the no risk taking side, which is not a knock. It's a smart move, but I just don't see him taking a lot of risks in a fight with Francis, whether it's pushing him up against the fence and trying to wear him out, just shooting takedowns and getting into firefights with Francis Ngannou. It's just not always a great idea. It seems like the smart play is to be long and elusive and stick and move and stay on the outside and just pace him and wear him out and get your decision win. I don't think John Jones has the power to hurt Francis. So I just think I believe that I know how that's going to go. And I feel the same in the Khamzat Chimaev Colby Covington fight. I think it's just a grappling, wrestling, grindy, super ugly fight. I'm not 100% who wins that, but I think Colby Covington has a much better chance than I think a lot of the world would give him.
Can I just dive in there? And I'm not trying to argue with you, but it's a conversation. It's a debate.
Let's fucking argue. Come on.
Well, we fucking will, Anthony Smith. John Jones, right? I know I'm not your favorite person, right? But he was decimating, destroying, obliterating all of his opposition early. And then he fell into this kind of coasting gear, right? Mm-hmm. Towards the end, and there's theories, Anthony, this isn't directed at you. People saying, he's fighting to the level of his competition, and people were making excuses for it, right? But the reality is there was a shift in his not a shift in his ability, but he just didn't look as impressive. It looked like the game caught him up. But to play devil's avocado, it's a stupid thing we say on this show, John, instead of devil's advocate, you could make a comparison to one George St. Pierre. George St. Pierre was, when he came on the scene initially, making short work of people, super aggressive, getting submissions and head kick knockouts, etc., etc. But then with the pressures of being the champ, pressures of the lifestyle, making those massive, massive paydays, life-changing money every time they fight, it kind of affected his performance and he started to play it safe. Then he stepped away from the sport, came back 4 years later and fucking beat the shit out of me and choked me out unconscious in Madison Square Garden. Do you not think there's a possibility that Jones comes back reinvigorated, charged up, missing the octagon, and just ready to wreck shop, John?
Yeah, no, I certainly think that you could see a tremendous version of Jon, and a lot of people felt like this was an eventuality that he was going to move up to heavyweight. I think the George St. Pierre comparison is absolutely an apt one because, George was roundly criticized for all of the title defenses that were decisions, even though they were 50-43, some of them, right? Jon Jones has double-digit decision wins in the UFC, right? So that trend is absolutely, I don't know if it's a shift, but it absolutely has happened. But I do believe this is the greatest mixed martial arts athlete skill for skill that I have ever seen, and his mind might be his greatest asset. So I do think that he's going to come back and present a really good version of himself. He still might get knocked out in round one, but I'm curious to see what the betting line will be. It's probably already out there.
Obviously, there's only one of us that's been in an octagon with him, though, Anthony. I will let you have the final say, of course.
Yeah, I always get so much shit for saying this, but I'll start it the way that I usually end it, which is where I get in trouble because no one listens to the fucking end of it. I do believe that Jon Jones is the greatest mixed martial arts athlete that's ever lived, and I believe that he's still that guy. I really do. I just don't know that he can create things that he didn't have before. Like his distance management, his range, his decision making, his coachability is probably his biggest thing. It's almost like you're fighting him and whoever the fuck is in his corner, because it like they're all game planning you, and they're all individually at certain times have something to say, and Jon reacts to it like that. So it's really, really tough. I just don't know that that's how I would fight Francis Ngannou. If I had Jon Jones' tools and his abilities and his size and just the things that he does so great, I'm just not sure that I would take a risk with a guy like Francis. Like, you can open up with a guy like Cyril Gane because of the way that he moves, the way that he fights, and almost everybody else in the division. I can't think of another guy that would change the way that Jon fought more than Francis Ngannou. Like, I think maybe he does come back super reinvigorated and aggressive and mean. I just don't know that Francis Ngannou is the guy that he acts on it with. That said, Jon Jones is a crazy motherfucker. So, he started his first ever title fight at 21 years old or whatever he was, with a flying.
Was he 21?
Shogun.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
That's insane. 20.
And his first strike was a flying knee versus Shogun, who like at the time was a terrifying individual. So who knows what Jon will do? Jon doesn't know what he's going to do.
From one Jon that doesn't know what he's going to do to a Jon that does know. John, how are you for time? Because we don't want to keep you too
I got
long.
plenty of time.
Oh, perfect. Good. Well, in that case then, the fight that you said between Zhang Weili and Valentina Shevchenko, I love that pick. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. And in fact, when we tie in this little piece of news, number 3, Valentina Shevchenko says she can't find a fight and questions why the entire division is so quiet. In fact, she said, I want this fight frequently because I can't do it, Valentina, because I realize this is a problem for UFC to find opponents in order for me to fight frequently. My understanding is that everyone would love to fight for the title. So what's happening with you girls? Why are you all so quiet? So essentially saying nobody's calling her out. What do you make of that?
Well, we have a big fight between Lauren Murphy and Jessica Andrade that is divisionally relevant. It seems as though maybe Tala Santos is going to fight Erin Blanchfield. And beyond that, there aren't necessarily that many names that factor prominently in the equation. Certainly Manon Fior, who just beat Caitlin Chookagian. I don't know if they want to strike immediately right now. I think Fior probably needs a little bit more developmental time, maybe a UFC main event to sort of cut her teeth there. So it's not as though there's just an avalanche of contenders, and that's why I've landed on Zhang Weili. And as Anthony alluded to, a lot of us don't know how that fight's going to go. I mean, I certainly think Shevchenko is the bigger woman and would be the betting favorite. But, I think that the fan base would, with respect to Tyler Santos, who was very competitive when they fought in Singapore, and you were there, Michael, but I just think the fan base would go fucking nuts for Shevchenko and Zhang Weili.
I mean, could you imagine if they did that in China? Could you imagine? And the thing is, Shevchenko, I kind of feel for her because Nunes has the title as the GOAT, the female GOAT, But it's not really fair because it's Shevchenko that's stepping up. It's Shevchenko that's at a disadvantage every time they fight. Size matters. That's why there is weight classes. And I'm not talking trash about Nunes. I'm a huge fan. She's an incredible person and an amazing fighter. But the reality is Shevchenko is going to be the smaller person in that fight every time. And the first fight, all right, Nunes got it. Second fight was very close and Nunes got it as well. But if they fought at a catch weight, 130 pounds, you never know. Maybe there might be a difference. Zhang Weili going up to 125, you're going to see the roles reversed. Shevchenko is going to be the bigger person, but Zhang Weili is not exactly a tiny strawweight. You know what I mean?
Right.
I would love to see that fight.
And I honestly do believe that given her body of work and given how close that second fight was with the consensus GOAT Amanda Nunes, like Valentina Shevchenko is certainly the current champion that's more worthy of an opportunity to become a two-division champion than Zhang Weili, who only recently got her title back. But man, I mean, you want to talk about a competitive fight that the fans would be salivating over. I got to think internally they're giving that a long bit of thought, right?
What do you think?
You would think so. Yeah, you would think so. I mean, just there's just with Zhang Weili just having a lot of stuff going on right now. Like in that division, there's a lot of rematches. There's a lot of those girls have already fought each other. And with Valentina having a bunch of problems finding a fight, I'm not surprised that people aren't jumping at the opportunity to fight Valentina. I don't necessarily think it's probably the easiest weight class to get a title shot in. Yeah. You just have to get on a little bit of a run, and a win and a finish, you're probably good enough. So that runs into a problem if you're a younger girl that or younger woman that hasn't had a bunch of UFC fights. I mean, you rattle off 2 or 3, like you can start calling Valentina's name, you might get one, but no one's going to be ready for that at that, probably ever, but especially after 2 or 3. So I think that's some of the problem is a lot of these women probably want a little bit more time, and because she's just thrashing people so quickly, they're not getting a lot of time. Manon could probably call for that fight, and I would not be shocked to see her get it. And I think she said in her post fight that she wanted a little more time, that she wanted a couple more fights because she wasn't quite there yet as far as the experience goes.
Sorry, Anthony. Yeah, I thought you were done. Because the thing is as well, we can't have rinse and repeat. You know what I mean? You can only sell the consumer the same fight so many times. You know what I mean? Rose and Zhang has happened twice. So yeah, all right. Zhang just took the belt off Carla. She's now the champion again. So what are they going to do? Throw Rose in again for the third time? You know what I mean? It doesn't really make sense. Jon Jacek's out the window. Fioro, as you say, I'd say you're absolutely right, John. Another main event to cut her teeth, to get the experience, to go 5 rounds, and also for the buying public to get a little more familiarized with her. So, I mean, it sounds like early days to be talking about super fights with Zhang Weili. She only just won the belt back in her last fight.
Well, and I think that would be part of the tune you would hear from Valentina Shevchenko if she was with us here today. Like, she would say it respectfully, but sort of internally like, fuck you, I'm going to go challenge at 35. I'm not going to take on a strawweight who comes up. Because candidly, for Valentina Shevchenko, we can sit here right now and make an argument that she's the greatest female mixed martial arts athlete of all time. She loses to a strawweight coming up. That's something that's going to dent her legacy a little bit. So obviously, like, she could move up and fight Amanda and be the betting underdog with really no legacy risk, or put a lot of her legacy on the line taking on a strawweight, So I don't know. I think one of those 2 fights make a lot of sense for Valentina. I just don't know. I think it might end up being Tyler Santos again. We'll see.
So I got a quick question. I was talking about this just a couple weeks ago, and although your job and my job are different, I think there are some things that overlap a little bit, and those are 2 fights where I wouldn't have any problems trying to explain to the average fan, I don't want to call them casuals, but your everyday, consumer, that there's a chance that Valentina can lose. And because that's what people want to hear. And I love Caitlin Chukagian. I think she's a sweetheart. I love watching her fight. Maybe it's not broadly, it's not the most fan appeasing style, but I love watching her fight, and I understand how hard it is to fight the way that she fights. But it's very difficult when I'm sitting at the desk answering questions. How can Caitlin Chukagian win this fight? And to be very honest, whether it's Caitlin Chukagian or it's Lauren Murphy or it's Jessica, I don't have an answer. Because in my eyes, in my opinion, in those fights at that time, none of those women had a path to victory. I love that Zhang Weili fight because I can come up just off the top of my head right now with ways to win. But do you have the same struggle when you're helping build these fights and you want to give these opportunities to these other contenders and challengers? You don't want to be disrespectful, but you also have to be honest.
Yeah, no, good question. And certainly when Valentina Shevchenko has defended titles against Jennifer Maia and Tayla Santos, baby, you hear us giving even more credit to the challenger than we probably should, because those are inherently some close rounds, and you're not expected that Valentina Shevchenko is going to be involved in close rounds. But I had a hard time recently with Zhang Weili versus Carla Esparza. I thought the betting line was way out of whack. I thought it was going to be a very quick fight. And I say that with all due respect to Carla. I just thought stylistically, it's just the worst matchup for her in the division. And when I'm trying to outline ways that Carla can win, other than taking an unnecessary risk to try to get a finish, I didn't think she could chain takedowns. I didn't think she had the physical strength to keep Zhang Weili down nor out-grapple her once she got the fight there. So yeah, sometimes it is a challenge. And, that's why you just lean into the promotional hyperbole as best you can sometimes. But sometimes there are fights that aren't necessarily as billable as others.
Well, that's just the way it goes. And, talking of Shevchenko, she's going to be joining the show very, very soon. So all you believers out there, she wanted me to do it at 7 a.m. local time because she's in Kyrgyzstan right now. There's quite the time difference. And I was going to do it, but then I went skiing with my son, so I had to rearrange. So we got Shevchenko. Well, I booked a skiing trip. I said yes. And then I realized that double
Lucas would have understood.
Fuck Lucas is what I'm saying. And I agree. He's a little shit. He's spoiled. But so we got Shevchenko coming up. We've also got Leon Rocky Edwards on Thursday.
Oh, wow.
We've also got Paul Craig on Thursday as well. So a little mention there. John, I'm very happy because I feel like now you get the recognition that you deserve, right? I've worked alongside you, and I got to say, seeing your attention to detail, seeing the care and dignity that you give this sport, seeing the lengths that you go to ensure that every single fighter from the first prelim to the main event gets the rub that is necessary to get the attention, to get their story out. You go the extra mile with that every single time, and people can see it, they can hear it. I remember when one of the first times I saw you commentate, but I was in the crowd. You were on your feet and you were so animated with your body because you're feeling it and you're in it, and that transfers to the screen and to the people at home. But just talk to me about your process, if you will, because I know you go on social media a little bit and you talk about some of the things that you do, but you are leading the sport by far, and you're probably one of the best play-by-plays in all the sports. I don't watch sports, so I don't know, but you're damn bloody good, John. Yeah, talk to me about your process.
Well, thank you, buddy. Honestly, I can't really respond appropriately, right? I'm blown away by the words, obviously having the respect of you two men at the sport. And 11 years in, I do believe I've sort of hit my stride a little bit. But the two things that I can always control, my output, right? My work ethic, how hard I'm working, and then my energy on fight night. Now, I could flub a lot and have a bad show, but I can always control those two things. And ultimately, the number one part of my job is to try to humanize these athletes and make the fan base care about them. And yeah, I mean, sometimes I get frustrated when I'm in a back-to-back situation and Mick Maynard and Sean Shelby are giving me 30 fighters in back-to-back weeks. And how am I going to get to know 60 fighters in the span of 8 days and optimally humanize all of them? You just can't do it. But obviously, Brian Sands said to me way back when, it's an open book test. You might as well show up with some damn notes. And I obviously took that to heart. I handwrite all of my own things. And I guess, I think a lot about the families and friends of the athletes that are sitting back and watching this, right? And yeah, maybe I take the job too seriously at times when it comes to the pronunciations and certain things, right?
Oh, no, I'm only messing with you, John, when I say that. Come on, bro.
But you only get one shot at this, right?
Yeah.
And candidly, I remember the late Josh Saman was very put off in the day, when in his UFC debut, they called him Josh Salmon, and he put out something publicly. And he said, it took me my whole life to get to the UFC. All my family and friends are watching. Maybe they could fucking pronounce my name right, So I take it seriously. And, I always say, like, if they delayed the fight card 5 hours, like, I could make use of that time. And, Mike, you're working the entire Saturday, right? When you're not running, hitting the pavement, like, you're working, So I start with the work ethic. Obviously, I feel like there's been an evolution in terms of the on-air performance, but obviously your praise means a lot. And, working for a guy like Dana White, for all three of us, you got to earn it every show. Like, I can be fired at any time without cause. And if you don't think that after a couple bad shows, if my effort's not there, I'm fucking gone. And I take that approach to Brazil. Rest assured.
John, I mean, Michael says things a lot prettier than I do. But I've told you this privately several times that anytime I have a problem, I reach out. If I have a question on how I can be better, Jon Anik's the first guy that I think about calling. If I ever have a name pronunciation, this is no bullshit. I will go back to a fight that you called of that fighter. And if I can't say it how you say it, I'll find another way. Like, I'll use their nickname, I'll use their first name, whatever it is. I'll find a different way because I want to get it right. So, what does your prep look like? Like, not just, it's easy to say, I put the work in, I take lots of notes, but like, how much time do you, because sometimes you'll say shit. I put a lot of work in. I prep a lot. I watch a lot of film. I study these guys. I look at their social medias. Like, and a lot of times there's just not a lot there as far as being an analyst. I think at the cage you can use a lot of that stuff, but there's a lot of times where you'll say shit. I'm like, how did he know that? Like, I don't understand sometimes. Like, it just happened a couple weeks ago where I think maybe it was Mike. It mentioned someone's coach, and it was like the longest name I'd ever heard, and you had it like on the top of right off the top of your head. So
John's so good at that because I do struggle with the coaches and the cornermen sometimes,
Yeah, it was so fast.
Sorry,
he didn't even have to look at. There was no notes involved. He had it on the tip of his tongue already. So, like, what is that? Specifically that process. Like, do you spend a certain amount of time per fighter? Like, how does that work?
And in our defense, real quick, John hasn't been cracked around the head a million times.
Right. And I also have had sort of 11 years to work on how I prepare for the job, even when I'm analyzed and assessed by the UFC, because I'm a full-time employee, right? So I go through like the whole review process at the end of the year. It doesn't affect my salary for the following year. But even when I sit down with my bosses, I'm constantly trying to make my preparation process more efficient, right? Especially when you're dealing with 30 athletes. But, little video interviews, little articles. I save my notes so maybe I can pick up something that was said several years ago and then run it back a few fights later. But a lot of it is just time and just scouring the internet. And Michael and I sometimes will both be light on a guy and we'll connect during the fight week and try to sort of bridge that gap a little bit. But at the end of the day, like, I will wake up on fight day, and if I'm light on Sung Woo Choi, by the time I go to the arena, I'm no longer light on Sung Woo Choi. But you're right, Anthony, for a lot of these men and women, there isn't a ton out there, and maybe they don't do a media day, or you didn't contact the athlete, and you have to go to their social media, and maybe you get a local article that you have to interpret. But, the last thing I want to do is not have a lot of bullets on these athletes. Like, their families watching. I want to try to tell their story as best I can. This is the soundtrack of their professional lives, and it's our job to provide it.
Well, as you say, soundtrack to their professional life. I mean, for a lot of these people, if they're making their debut, they're fighting on TV. For a lot of people, that's a big deal. And you can remember, Anthony, your first time. I remember my first time, And as you say, John, you're absolutely right in terms of Josh Saman. Jesus Christ. Yeah, but that's a perfect example.
Yes.
Now, I'm going to say this, John. You're an old school guy because you talk about your notes. Ladies and gentlemen, you want to see John's notes. They're always on like a blue card, right? They're always blue or white.
We try to go blue or red. Sometimes those are hard to come by. Blue and red for the corners.
The smallest writing known to man, and there is a lot on those cards. Now, this is all my notes on every fighter. And you're right, you keep them. Like, you write it down. I type them all on my phone. So why do you write them? Is that because it goes in your head more? Because I have heard that theory.
That's exactly what it is. And there are a lot of people in the fight game that journal regularly. I do so much handwriting for my professional life that in terms of my own mental health, like I can't be bothered with a journal to collect my thoughts, right? But yes, absolutely. Like, I don't have the greatest memory in the world, Michael. You know that to be true. And so a lot of it for me is handwriting it. And so then some things get committed to memory, like Anthony Smith fought Antonio Braga Neto at his UFC debut, and he always wonders why I remember that. It's because I wrote it down on his fighter card so many times that it's just something that stuck with me for whatever reason, because I probably wrote down 9 times, made his UFC debut against this dude, and it sticks. But yeah, bro, I mean, there are times where I think about digitizing my system, and I think about how antiquated it is and how much time I would save myself if these things were typed out. But the system, I don't think, is broken, so we're going to stick.
Yeah, it works. It works.
All right, let's talk about Shopify. Listen, if you're an entrepreneur, if you have a business, if you have something that you sell, you want to be online, okay? You got to take it to the global audience, which is available to you by the power of the internet. But doing so can sound complicated, time-consuming, stressful, expensive. Not with Shopify. Shopify simplifies it all very, very quickly, makes it super easy and very, very affordable, especially with this incredible offer that I'm going to tell you about in a second. You can customize your online store to your style. You can connect with new customers to drive growth and even maintain the relationships that will keep them coming back no matter how big you are able to grow. Every minute, new sellers from around the world are revolutionizing their businesses and making their first sales with Shopify. Once you start selling, Shopify makes getting paid very simple because it accepts all major payments. In fact, it says every type of payment, every type. Shopify grows with your business, so no matter how far or how big you grow, thanks to an endless list of integrations with third-party apps, anything you can think of, from on-demand printing to accounting to chatbots, everything you need to revolutionize your business, okay? Do you want marketing made simple? Shopify removes the guesswork with built-in tools that help you create, execute, and analyze your online marketing campaigns. So, it all sounds very complicated there. Or maybe that doesn't. Maybe I'm just a moron, but some of the stuff that you said there, maybe you don't follow it. But listen, here's the deal. If you do have a business or you're selling something, and Shopify makes it super easy, super affordable, not complicated or time-consuming. It does all the heavy lifting. Thanks to a 24/7 help and extensive business course library, Shopify is also there to support your success every single step of the way. So what are you waiting for? It's time to get online. It's time to get online, but you again, sounds expensive, right? No. You can sign up for $1 per month for a trial period at shopify.com/believe, all lowercase. Go to Shopify.com, Shopify, Shopify.com/believe to take your business to the next level today. Sign up for $1 a month. For $1, what is $1? It's nothing, right? You probably bought a coffee from Starbucks or wherever. $4, $5, $6. I don't go to Starbucks, whatever it costs, okay? $1, you can have a little experiment and take your store, your business online. There's a lot of people out there. Wherever you're at right now, you are not reaching them. Get online, do it easy, do it cheaply, and make yourself more money by spending $1. Go to shopify.com/believe to take your business to the next level today. Shopify.com/believe.
How hard is the, sorry, I'm
No,
jumping around.
I remember on as well.
Well, I'm jumping around a little bit because it just popped in my head. How hard is the video game stuff? Because I seen you do a video
right now.
Yeah, like I seen you do a video, maybe it was with DC or something like that, and you guys kind of had to you just throw out some random shit, like it wasn't scripted, like you just had to talk as if it was a fight. How hard is that? It seems impossible.
It's one of the hardest things I've done in broadcasting. For UFC, EA Sports UFC 3, the first game I did 92 hours of solo voiceover work. I didn't do anything with Joe Rogan and that for EA Sports.
92 hours.
Dude, it was brutal. And some of it was super high intensity. Like, I hadn't called Conor McGregor versus Jose Aldo. So they had me call that fight 4 times. I mean, can you imagine? 4 times the damage that did to my voice calling that fight, even though it only lasted 13 seconds. You know, I have to put myself there, and I'm giving them vein-popping calls of Conor knocking out Jose Aldo. So, yeah, I mean, it's nicer now doing it with Daniel obviously being in studio together, and that changes things a little bit. But, yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of sort of mundane details that need to be in the game. There's a lot of nuances, a lot of intricate things, and to your point, a lot of ad-lib stuff, right, where it's just fighter A, fighter B, they're both guys. Neither one is in the UFC necessarily, just maybe a player at home has created a fighter. So, you know, I think I've gotten a little bit better over the years, but I am no video game voicing expert. That's for sure.
I don't know. It sounds pretty good. And this is what you do for a living, John. So, you know, but of course, you got to be humble. Harrington. So we'll allow Harrington to throw a subject at us. But, Anthony, do you look at the notes? I mean, in terms of doing research and all the rest of it, be honest. Just be honest. Because
Most of the time, no.
Because a lot of people say, because I see in the comments go, look at Bisping. He's not even listening. It's like, because I'm driving the fucking show. Do you know what I mean? I'm looking at the next topic and see what I'm looking at stuff that kind of ties in, that can be a segue and stuff like that.
Right.
So you don't even look at the notes.
Right.
No, because
it just shows up to our podcast.
It's more fun now.
Really? Yeah,
it's
exactly.
More fun that way. It's the first, like when I'm hearing this shit, it's the first time I'm hearing it.
Yeah.
So that's my genuine reaction.
Not a fun for you, bro. I'm fucking working my ass off. No wonder I've got a broken back. So you haven't seen any of these topics, because I was going to say, I'll allow you to choose one. But Harrington, tell us about what's going on with Derek Lewis, or what is going on with Derek Lewis, or why is he in the notes?
So Terrence McKinney found him, just running out on the streets in Houston. And he is looking like he is ready to compete in your old division, Michael. Derek Lewis has slimmed down, following 2 losses ahead of the Sergey Spivak fight here in February. I also wanted to bring up, just announced, I don't know if this probably affects 2 people on this call. That fight is going to take place on the original South Korea broadcast time. So the main card isn't going to start until 1 a.m. Eastern. What do you guys think about that? Do you think that affects the fighters at all?
Bro, bollocks to the fighters. It affects me, because that fight's on February the 4th. On February the 5th, which is my daughter's birthday, I fly to Australia, right? And the main card doesn't start until 1 a.m. Eastern, but still, it's going to be a late one. But regardless, you were going to say something, John?
Well, I was just going to say, for the European fans and the international viewers, they don't want to hear any fan in North America ever complain about a start time for UFC main card. But I can never remember us doing a show in Vegas where the main card started that late, right? 10 a.m.
Are you calling that?
No, because I'm going to head to Perth with you.
But I'm going to be with Fitzgerald then. We're coming 1 a.m. I ain't got patience for him.
that, and I will say, for me, like, I remember obviously times in my career being in Brazil when Lyoto Machida's making the walk at like 3:30 a.m. local time. And by the way, this pay-per-view, Anthony, as you know, is going to be pretty late as well. But there's just no way at 3 a.m. Eastern time when Derek Lewis makes the walk that I'm going to be awake. I just can't do it.
No,
That's the hard part. It is, because you got to have that energy. Derek Lewis, though, looking like he's slimming down. Looking like he's taking things seriously, because, he always kind of, I think he does take things seriously, because this is a big opportunity to make a lot of money. And that's why we all do it, right? To provide for our family. As husbands and fathers, we're providers. That's what we're trying to do. He plays it down. I remember famously a long time ago, he said to me that he trains like 30 minutes a day. And I followed up with him at Fox Sports, and I asked him, I said, was that true? Were you just saying it on camera to be funny? He said, no, seriously. 30 minutes a day, and my mind was blown. But obviously, as we know, tied to Avasa in Houston, Cyril Gahn in Houston. There was another one in Houston. Was it Pavlovich? Was that in Houston as well, or Texas at least? I believe it was Texas.
Was in Dallas.
Dallas. Yeah. I mean, Derek Lewis, everybody loves the guy. Absolutely hilarious, formidable opponent, the most knockouts in the history of the company. But what are your general feelings on that, John?
Well, I mean, he was a pretty big underdog going into that Sergey Spivak fight, and obviously that was not the first time within 24 hours of the fight that Derek Lewis hasn't been able to compete. I mean, certainly I think there has been an uptick in terms of the training commitment, in terms of the hours and the overall approach. And even though he obviously makes a ton of money to show, right? I mean, his bank account is got to be pretty fat right now. But he wants to still be divisionally relevant, and Sergey Spivak is very much that. So I think it's going to take, honestly, like one of the better training camps of his career to beat the oncoming polar bear. And I think, that's a memo that Derek Lewis obviously has gotten if the road work is any indication. So,
Yeah, he's going to need one of the better performances of his career, especially because Spivak he's like a smaller heavyweight, but he moves really well. He's fast. He's got power in his hand. He does it all very, very well. And you're right. It's not the first time that actually, I ended up at the main event the day of a fight versus Devin Clark, I believe, because Derek Lewis was supposed to fight Curtis Blades. And I believe Curtis Blades was actually the one who got sick. I think he ended up having COVID, I believe. But man, I'm such a big Derek Lewis fan. I think I'm more of a fan of Derek Lewis, the person, than so much the fighter. He has some nuances and some tricky things that he does, but kind of what you see when he fights is kind of what you get. I know that he's had the recent gym change or coach change or whatever. So I was really interested to see kind of what version of Derek Lewis we get. I don't know what it's going to take to keep Derek Lewis committed to this kind of a training system every single fight, though, because it almost seems like every time he loses or takes a couple losses, you see a new version of Derek Lewis for a little while, and then that maybe that gets a little stagnant, and it's almost like he needs. I understand it because I think it happens to me sometimes. I get a little bit comfortable. You win 3-4 fights in a row, and you start. I don't want to say you're believing your own bullshit, but I think you just get a little comfortable, and a couple losses make you feel very uncomfortable, and it's easy to make those changes coming off a loss. So I'm really excited to see, I guess, what version of himself he brings. I'm not necessarily sure too small. I don't want him to get too small, because the thing that makes Derek Lewis is just his absolute power and his mobility for his size. I don't think the huge belly that we've seen on him, at times where it's clear he's not even rushing to the fridge, is probably the most positive thing. But I wouldn't like to see him get too small either.
No,
that makes any sense.
And to be quite frank, and I'll say this as respectfully as I can, and I guarantee that there is a way more respectful way I could say it in everything I say. But I don't think necessarily pounding the pavement and working on his cardio and getting in the best physical shape possible is the answer to his problems. Listen, we love Derek Lewis. He's got such a fan-pleasing style, okay? He's a heavyweight. We all know at heavyweight, one punch, it's a cliche, but it is true with those 4-ounce gloves on. And he plays Russian roulette almost every time, because he will go out there and he'll stand and bang. And it's who's going to connect first, and he was connecting with Tai Tuivasa, but Tai Tuivasa got that massive elbow. Sergey Pavlovich, he went forward, and was, again, playing that game. You play that with Sergey Pavlovich, that's a dangerous game to play. So I think the point I'm making is I don't necessarily think that it's getting the gas tank better that he needs. I think it's just trying to add some other wrinkles to the game, maybe trying to get a takedown, maybe defending the wrestling, or whatever it may be. There's a lot of other wrinkles and facets to mixed martial arts to just knocking people out, which, as we know, he's the world leader in, he's the best at, and he can fucking knock anyone out if he connects. So it's almost a double-edged sword, because you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Because it's like, well, why wouldn't I use that? Because I knock people out. But the reality is, at heavyweight, you're going to walk onto things as well.
If I ever seen Derek Lewis slip and rip a counter, I'd probably fall out of my chair. And that's why I love the heavyweight division. It's my favorite division in MMA. It's just, I love watching, especially when it's live, and even more especially when it's live at the Apex. I know that I've seen a lot of fans and a lot of people get so frustrated because we're having so many fights still at the Apex. And I get it, because there's nothing like a live UFC event with sold out fans and a rowdy crowd and people are going insane. But there is something to be said for sitting next to you guys, listening to you guys call the fight to my left live, and having two 270-pound men in that tiny ass cage in the Apex just throwing absolute bombs. I can't think of a place I'd rather be.
John, let me ask you this on that note, because I was talking about this recently, because when you see knockouts, when you watch it on TV, that's one thing. But when you're as close to the action as we are, it almost seems, it does. I mean, when I see people lose consciousness, I'm like, it blows my mind. That's why we're always out of our chairs. That's why, they get these crazy shots of you, DC, and Rogan or whoever's commentating, because it's amplified, because it's sometimes 6 feet away from us. You can almost see the soul leaving their body. What is one that stands out to you throughout your 11 years with the company? If you could pick 1, 2, or even 3 that stand out to you.
Oh, it's one. It was Detroit, Michigan. Francis Ngannou knocked out Alistair Overeem. I thought Overeem was deceased. I don't even know that I can come up with second knockout, honestly. I did think he was going to come back from it. It looked like his neck broke. His head just went boom, and that type of force, and it wasn't even full throttle.
And the follow-up.
Yeah. So that was the scariest one for me, to be sure. It was a 2-man booth, me and Joe. I'll never forget it. It was just eerie. Maybe the last 2-man booth I've worked with Joe, but it was that was just ferocious.
John, you're not a fighter, but still, you're a man. I think we can all appreciate just how terrifying Francis Ngannou is. I always say, we were talking about it a while ago. If there's one, the last person I want on planet Earth to walk into a bar, shit-faced drunk, and just starting a fight with everybody is Francis Ngannou. If that's happening, I'm out the fire exit. I don't care. I'm like, no way. I don't want any of this shit. Not a chance.
And I've been around a lot of professional athletes, football players. There is a uniqueness to this Francis Ngannou package. And people talk about Brock Lesnar, his hand size. Lesnar's hands were big, like top to bottom. Ngannou shakes my hand, it touches my elbow. It's a totally different ballgame.
Are you guys familiar with the situation, what's going on with Beneil Dariush and Dustin Poirier? There's a little bit of beef going on. Well, just for the believers, anyone that isn't aware, should I say, Harrington, just set the stage for everyone, and then we'll get into it.
Okay. So Beneil Dariush said in an interview that he thinks that if somebody like Poirier is just waiting around for names, then it's time for him to get out of the game, right? There's not a lot of guys like Michael Chandler left in the division, and if that's what he's waiting for and he won't fight these up-and-coming monsters, maybe it's time to hang it up. Dustin Poirier responded that he appreciates the advice and told him that he will give him a code for free shipping on any of his hot sauce.
Of course he did.
What do you think, John?
Right, well, Dustin Poirier is a first-ballot Hall of Famer for me. I don't think he needs an undisputed UFC lightweight championship to validate his greatness, but I think if I look at it from Dustin's perspective, there's just not a whole lot to be gained from a win over Beneil Dariush. Certainly, Benny has the long winning streak, and the avid fans are acutely aware of how big a win over Beneil Dariush would be for Dustin. And maybe it would lay the foundation for a title shot, but I don't think Dustin sees it that way. He doesn't see Beneil Dariush as the path to an undisputed championship opportunity, and I think he just sees more interesting fights out there at this stage of his career. But I do think Dariush is wise to sort of, not create beef, but at least engage a little bit, because for Beneil, you're not getting the fights when you disengage, so you might as well, get after it a little bit publicly, and here we are on Believe You Me talking about it, so he's doing something right.
Well, first of all, I would love a free shipping code. That'd be fantastic. So Dustin Poirier, if you're listening, send me some of that.
Never tried the hot sauce. Is it good?
It's good. It's really good. I like it a lot. But I think two things can be true at the same time. And I don't always think that maybe we allow that to happen, but I almost agree with Beneil Dariush. If I was to put myself in his seat, I understand his frustration. I understand it's not just this situation. It's years of frustration probably building up. But I also understand Dustin Poirier's situation he's in as well. So I guess I agree with both guys. Beneil Dariush is just, he might be the most disrespected fighter out there. And some of it is to his credit, some of it's to his fault. Some of it is because he is so goddamn dangerous. He's so willing to engage on his feet because he's so confident in his ground game. If that dude gets you on the ground, it is a goddamn problem for anybody in the division. And I don't care what their name is. But he's not crazy popular. He doesn't move the needle. And that is, at this point, purposeful. He could have changed that a long time ago without changing who he was. I was never like a loud shit talker. I've got into it with people before, obviously, but those were very organic. And I found a way to be relatable to whatever group of people found themselves wanting to root for me or whatever. But I had to work at it because I'm not a super interesting guy normally. I'm just an idiot from Nebraska.
I gotta do a podcast with this guy.
I know. I'm not. I'm just a regular idiot from Nebraska. So Beneil's got to figure out what that thing is, and I think this is a good step in the right direction for sure because he got Dustin to reply. And if I'm Dustin, I understand especially where I'm at in my career, I haven't accomplished even half of what Dustin Poirier has, and I would never put myself in the same realm as him. But as far as the motivation factor goes, I understand that. Like Ryan Spann, I was very indifferent to until he created something. I didn't create it. But he kind of lit that fire a little bit. Leading up to that fight, it's hard to get motivated for some people when I've been doing this 17 years. Dustin's probably been doing it as long or longer. So I understand wanting someone that makes you excited to get out of bed. Someone that it's a little bit scary, like Michael Chandler. I think they had that interaction in the octagon where he said, he was afraid because Michael Chandler's dangerous. He's got a big name. No one wants to get embarrassed. There's something exciting there. And I can't fault Dustin Poirier for being at this point in his career, wanting something exciting because I don't know what he gets out of the Beneil Dariush fight. Does he give a shit about the undisputed title? There was a point there where I wasn't sure that he did.
The reality is, though, it's not Dustin Poirier's obligation or concern what's going on with Beneil's career. He can't care about everyone else in the organization. You're caring about numero uno, yourself. Simple as that. This isn't a team sport. So he doesn't give a fuck about Beneil Dariush. With respect, I feel for Beneil because he's kind of in the same pattern as Leon Edwards used to be, Arnold Allen currently, and other fighters that have got this amassed a huge long win streak, clearly highly competent, one of the best in the world. But as you said, Anthony, there's a little piece missing in terms of this modern day era, call it the Conor McGregor era, whatever you want to call it, the entertainment era. But eventually, the cream rises to the top. Look at Leon Edwards. He is now the champion. So I think he's just going to continue doing that. I understand his frustration because Dustin Poirier, it does seem like they're on a roundabout. Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, Charles Oliveira, they're all just fighting each other, going round and round in circles. And it's even worse for him now.
That's good business, though.
It's great business.
You're one of those guys. It's great business.
And they're amazing fights. Look at Poirier and Chandler. Look at Gaethje. And look at any one of them. You match them up either way. It's ballistic. But the problem is for Beneil as well is that Islam is fighting Volkanovski, right? Charles Oliveira, and he's probably the favorite going into that matchup. Charles Oliveira may potentially get that next shot. After that, it's going to be Poirier or Gaethje unless they go and fire Beneil. That's a fight they can lose because Beneil is that good. So whilst I'm not saying that Poirier or Gaethje are ducking him because they would never do that, they are honourable men and they believe in themselves. It's also not a bad idea as a manager to sidestep that one a little bit.
And Dariush, his style is not meat and potatoes, right? And I'm not suggesting that any fighter that has ever been pegged as a championship backup is meat and potatoes, right? But Vicente Luque, right? Guy, in terms of preparing for Vicente, largely you pretty much know what you're going to get. Obviously, he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt, but pretty basic as far as his Jiu-Jitsu goes. Now, when Vicente got his opportunity as a backup, it was on short notice. He weighed in like 12 pounds over, right? But Beneil Dariush could find himself, appealing to the promotion and winning some brownie points by offering himself up as a backup. But, I don't know if you're getting Islam Makhachev to say, all right, I'll fight Volkanovski and Dariush as a backup, But I do think that could be an opportunity that presents itself. I just don't know that he's going to get Poirier or Gaethje to sign on the dotted line.
But no, I don't suspect that unless they're forced to, and I don't see a situation. I don't know what situation that would be in. This again, I'm bouncing around a little bit. If we talked about Arnold Allen and Leon Edwards and Dariush kind of in the same vein, as a person whose job is essentially to speak about them and you're searching for something to talk about and you see the guys that do it well, you see the guys that don't do it well, guys or girls, whatever. If you were to give them some advice, because you've covered a lot of these guys' fights several times, like Leon, Arnold, and Beneil. I guess what would you say to them if they were to say, Jon Anik, having a tough time connecting with fans, or I don't even want to say be interesting, but just connecting with the public and finding a reason to make people give a fuck about me? What would that be? And maybe it's a broad advice. I don't know.
Well, it's hard to be fake or to not be yourself. And I do think it's a tremendous challenge for guys like Colby Covington and Henry Cejudo, who have sort of created this persona, to maintain that, right? Like even for Cejudo, who is not inherently quite as cringy as the guy he presents to the world, like he has to maintain that. And I think that's why when you look at the most successful sort of trash talkers or microphone guys in UFC history, right? Conor McGregor, Michael Bisping, Chael Sonnen, even Bryce Mitchell, right? Because they're not free-writing what they're saying. I mean, Chael to some degree did, right? But those guys just have great comedic timing. They have the gift of gab. They have good articulation skills, and they're just being themselves, right? Bryce Mitchell can get up at a press conference and just by nature of being himself can resonate with a crowd. So my first advice would always be stay true to who you are. And if that's not going to resonate with the fan base, maybe you make some adjustments. And the second thing would always be to have some name on the tip of your tongue, because people obviously don't maximize that post-fight call-out. And Joe Silva would always tell me when I would go in there, try to do my job for me. So, be bullish on the microphone, even if it's not who you are.
You've got to be.
How angry do you guys get when people are asking for, this is for both you guys, I guess, because I've heard John say this before, but I don't think I've ever asked Michael this. How angry do you guys get listening to people beg for bonuses?
Listen, no. Hold on. We got to be careful here because
I did it one time. I did it one time.
Yeah.
And then I heard Jon Anik say that it drove him crazy, and I've never done this.
Well,
yeah.
You.
Go on, John.
I was just going to say, Michael, historically, I have noticed that when guys ask for the bonus, oftentimes they don't get it. Like, you let the performance speak for itself. Now, obviously, Sergey Pavlovich, I think, recently called for it and got it. He was not going to be denied that night. But generally speaking, if memory serves, like, it's not endearing you to the guys in the back when you go bonus begging. It doesn't reflect well on the promotion necessarily, right? So let the performance do the talking, I feel like, is the best advice.
My pet hate when I go in and speak to the fighters is, sometimes, obviously, John, as you know, and Anthony, but I think a lot of people at home, when they're watching, they forget this. We're on a strict TV schedule. We've got to get to adverts and all the rest of it. We've got to get to a certain number of fights that have left. Perhaps some fights have gone long or whatever it is, right? And they say, okay, 2 questions, tops. That's it. Or sometimes, John, they might even say 1 question. We have an earpiece on. We're not making on the fly decisions. We're not deciding if we're going to do a 5-minute interview or a 1-minute interview. We're being dictated to, and it's our job to follow those rules because there's a strict schedule of TV networks all over the world. And a lot of people give me shit, and a lot of the time they say a few things and then they try and grab the microphone. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I've been told I can't. And then sometimes they almost rip it out of your hand, so you do it, and then you get a little nag in your ear, and people are like, bro. And then I get people in my DMs saying, what the fuck, Bisping? Why can't you just let that guy have his moment? And I'm like, bro, I am not trying to take away a moment from anybody. I'm trying to do my job, but talk to me about any frustrations you've had, John.
Well, yeah, no, Craig Borsari, who was the guy who hired me back in 2011, he said, whatever you do, don't give up the microphone because you're essentially giving up control of the broadcast. The only time I have given it up was Mark Munoz when he retired in the Philippines. I felt like I could trust Mark to have the mic and then actually pass it back. But you're right. Those moments oftentimes are chaotic, and sometimes maybe we're going from ESPN2 to ESPN. And I know you have a lot of fighters who listen to the show, and I would just say to the fighters, it's never a reflection upon you if you don't get an interview. But I can tell you, if we have 15 fights and you're the featured prelim and you don't get a finish, we're going to pay-per-view and you're probably not getting an interview. So sometimes that's just the nature of the beast. But you're right, Michael. Like, when they're saying it's 1 question, it's like, man, how am I going to do this? But figure out a way. That's your job.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Harrington, come on here, please, sir. And we'll let John, seeing as John has been so great with your time. Thank you, John. We appreciate it. I'm sure everybody else does. 8, 9, and 10. Just quickly throw them at him, concisely, Harrington. Don't read them out. Don't go into fucking full detail, but just throw them at John, and he can choose the subject. And Anthony, he doesn't even know what it is because we've just, he never does his research. Yeah.
Okay. So number 8, Jose Aldo finds himself in a bit of hot water politically, hosting apparently the former president of Brazil, Bolsonaro, in his Orlando home, while also dealing with possible fallout from COVID-19 relief accepted during the pandemic. Number 9, LaRon Murphy versus Nathaniel Wood is set for UFC 286, pitting 2 Englishmen against each other on the London card. And number 10, Jake Paul says he's tried everything to get a boxing match with Tommy Fury. Tommy Fury responded saying that if he'll take the fight next month, he will do it, and all proceeds will go to charity.
All right, a lot of good nuggets. I love that fight between Nathaniel Wood and LaRon Murphy. People just don't know how good Murphy is because his career has been perpetually interrupted by circumstance and injury. I absolutely love that fight. The Jose Aldo thing is pretty interesting. Now, his wife has come out and said, you know, it's the leftists in the country that are now coming after us for supporting the right wing. I never took any money that I shouldn't have taken during COVID, but obviously this is a very interesting circumstance that not just Jose Aldo is having to deal with, but I think some of the Gracie family as well. And obviously it comes, 10 days before I'm about to head to Rio. So an interesting climate in that nation right now, to be sure. And seemingly the Aldo family sort of smack dab in the middle of all of it.
I forgot about that. You're actually going there because that place is, well, they had an insurrection. Was it yesterday? Yesterday?
It's in Brasilia, right? So Rio, it's almost like New York to Chicago in terms of the separation. But yeah, I guess I'm sure the UFC will probably be monitoring things as we get closer to the UFC.
Yeah. Obviously, you're one half of the amazing Anik and Florian podcast, and find that where they get your podcast and on YouTube, of course. Do you go over and talk about the Jake Paul stuff? Because this is a circus, right? It's a circus, let's be honest. It's a shit show. And God bless him. He's making money, he's doing his thing, and he's making the most out of his name and his brand. And you can't fault the guy for that. This PFL stuff, they're going to bring in the Super League and they're going to get 50% of the revenue. And now all this stuff with Tommy Fury and whatnot. I mean, how much do you pay attention to all this kind of thing, John?
Oh, the Tommy Fury stuff is so tiring. I mean, that stuff to me is just in one ear and out the other. And candidly, I didn't really talk much about Jake Paul on our show when it came to the boxing stuff until he fought Anderson Silva. And then I think there was an uptick, at least as far as our coverage was concerned. But now that he's in MMA, and of course my podcast partner, Kenny Florian, is the lead analyst for the PFL, we led the show with it this week. And candidly, and my man Kenny's I thought Kenny would maybe be even more excited than he was, right? Because I thought that promotional announcement by Jake Paul was really well done. I didn't love some of the Dana Venom necessarily at the end, but promotionally, I thought it was really fucking well done. And I do believe that Jake Paul has played his cards pretty damn well. And I do believe he's the real article in terms of being genuine in his desire to help fighters. So I don't see a whole lot of downside. Now, there are a lot of unknowns. Who's the opponent going to be? How much can these guys really draw on pay-per-view? A lot remains to be seen. But if I was Kenny Florian, lead analyst for the PFL, I'd be fucking stoked.
God, I fucking hate Jake Paul.
Nah.
I try to look at it. We talked about this a little bit last week, but I try to look at it for what it is and stop, I guess, expecting that this is like a real thing. And I just try to look at it like this is an entertainment thing. This is a freak show. Just enjoy it like it's any other ridiculous freak show that whether it's a Triller or event. Like, I have no problem enjoying the shit out of that. And every goddamn slap fighting organization on planet Earth I probably watched. So, you know what? I just enjoy it for what it is. But I do have my questions on how much he actually cares about helping fighters.
Same.
I don't dig into it too much. At one point in time, Ariel spent an hour trying to convince me that, Jake Paul was the real deal. And now I think some of that tune has changed. But I think that's the biggest question for me. Like, I do feel like he gives lots of opportunities to people that already have money or people that should already have money, whether it's Ben Askren. Ben pretends to be just the broke homer or somewhere in Wisconsin, but Ben's doing just fine with his life. Tyron Woodley had plenty of title defenses. He should be doing fine. If he's not, that's his fault. Anderson Silva, is like the Brazilian Wesley Snipes, just rich as shit. That's what I tell everybody.
Is it Brazilian Muhammad Ali who we could have gone for? Or
no.
Why Wesley Snipes?
Because Wesley, like the Blade version of Wesley Snipes, just dangerous as fuck.
Right, so not the
That's what I
prop
look
just
at.
got out of prison and the IRS are taking all of his money version.
Yeah. No, the Blade one. But I am excited to see what Jake
The
Paul brings to the table in an MMA fight. It's a step in the right direction of getting me to shut up about it for sure.
Yeah.
I said that a bunch of times though.
Well, we talked
Like,
about
well, if he does this, I'll shut up, and then he does it, and I don't. So I have to at least be honest there.
I don't feel he has any necessarily an obligation to look after other fighters. I believe that he does lay that on a little bit thick to try and get kudos, to try and get people behind him to support his cause. And his cause is more than likely making as much money as he can for himself.
I feel like he probably does want to. I feel like he probably wants to. I just don't know.
If that could be a side effect, great.
Right.
But his first and foremost priority is to himself, because if you look at some of the people that competed on his boxing card, some of the people right down low on the prelims were earning shit, and the people in the PFL, unless they win the $1 million, they're not making millions of dollars either. And now only people in the Super League are going to get it. Well, if you really gave a shit, say, I'll come on board and I'll sign and I'll help you promote it and I'll bring my legions of fans, but I want every fucking person on this roster to receive 50% of it. He could have said that, but he didn't. He didn't say that. He said, yeah, cool. Me and some other washed up superstars that I can fight. Please, nobody that can wrestle, nobody that can box, somebody with a fucking name. Maybe we take a celebrity that used to play cricket or perhaps hosted a game show on TV that wants to try MMA. I fucking guarantee it's going to be someone like that. John, if you had to pick an MMA fighter for Jake Paul's first MMA fight, what do you think we're going to see?
No, I think you're right. I think it's going to be somebody that really leaves a lot to be desired, but you also have to recognize, and again, I'm largely judging them based upon this promotional announcement and Jake Paul's work ethic and success as a boxer and promoter up until this point. But
can't fold that stuff.
But obviously, you guys know, and certainly Michael as a former UFC champion, the pay-per-view buys and the money, it increases exponentially if you get to a certain threshold. But I'm not saying that they're going to have him fight Anthony Showtime Pettis or Jeremy Stevens or a big-name MMA guy, but if you trot him out against some no-name, who's buying that pay-per-view?
Well, nobody bought it for... And by the way, I'm not sitting here hating. This is our job, what we do as analysts, as podcasters, and just shooting the breeze in terms of what we know about the fight game. The idea was three guys sitting at a bar talking about what we love. So there's no agenda, I don't believe, from any of us. We're throwing out potential theories. I've got nothing particularly against Jake Paul. I find some of what he does to be very entertaining. I find some of it to be a little obnoxious. But, regardless, I've got no problem against him whatsoever. But I don't know. I think him and Anderson Silva didn't sell well at all. Right? If him and Anderson Silva does not sell well, then who could it be? Who is going to sell well? If him and Anderson Silva does not sell.
I mean, maybe that's the MMA turn though. He's got to find something new and fresh and different to kind of, I don't know, maybe bring more eyes to it, because it makes me a little bit more curious. Like, I could have watched the Anderson Silva fight or not watched it. I don't think it would have mattered to me, but the MMA thing intrigues me a little bit.
Yeah, I think part of the MMA turn, Michael, is right because the boxing numbers, at least of late, have left a bit to be desired.
Sure. Beep, 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 beep. This just did. Michael Bisping signs with the PFL. Like they got one idiot. They got one. Okay, are you sick of seeing money go out of your bank account and not knowing what it's for? Or in fact, maybe you're just unaware of it. Well, listen, that's where Rocket Money is going to come in, right? Formerly known as True Bill. What it is, all those subscriptions that you sign up for, it allows you to cancel them very, very simply on an app. All you do is press cancel. There'll be a bunch. You probably aren't even aware of how many that you have, right? And what we're telling you right now, this could save you thousands or hundreds per year, right? There's all these little gizmos. There's all these little apps. There's all these little integrations. And you sign up for free, but then after a little while, it starts coming out of your bank account and you forget about it. $2 here, $3 there. I just use Rocket Money I just figured out I have a DAZN subscription that I didn't even know about. As it turns out, I didn't cancel it because I thought, I like to watch fights. But I wasn't even aware that I had that. Yes, I have been hit in the head many, many times. But if you want to cancel your subscriptions, number one, just knowing which ones you have, which ones you've signed up to, that's hard. Cancelling them is very difficult. A lot of the time you have to call the bank. One time Rebecca got so annoyed with it that she just cancelled her credit card and got a new card to come. But then that caused all kinds of logistical problems because all the regular payments that come out linked to that card all failed. So it created a whole mess. So if we had Rocket Money, it would have been very simple. As I say, all you do is download the app and then you look at it. The app shows all your subscriptions in one place and cancels what you don't want. Rocket Money can even find subscriptions that you didn't know you were paying for. You may even find out that you've been double charged for subscriptions here and there. As I said, to cancel one, all you got to do is press cancel. And then Rocket Money does the rest. So what are you waiting for? Start saving and cancel unnecessary subscriptions today with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/believe. Seriously, this could save you hundreds per year. Money you can be spending on fun. Money you can spend on loved ones. Beer, alcohol. I don't know. Whatever you want to spend your cash on. Food. That's a good one. You want to live. Don't eat too much, though. You might look like Harrington. Okay? Eat too little. You might be all skinny like Brian. But whatever you want to spend your money on, go ahead. Okay? Go to rocketmoney.com/believe. All right? It will save you hundreds. I'm telling you, this app, Rocket Money, it's a game changer. Get involved. rocketmoney.com/believe. All right. Well, listen, I think we're going to get over to questions in just a second. Is there anything big that's happening or breaking, Harrington, in the news that we haven't seen or discussed before we do questions and let John get the hell out of here? Thank you again, John.
No, I think you guys.
Pleasure.
All right.
I love telling the Believe You Me audience every time I come on that Bisping used to fucking hate my guts when he was watching me on ESPN UK about 15 years ago.
I did.
Now we're boys, though. That's
all fucking right we are. Well,
a lot of people in television feel misunderstood, and I have so much respect for you now. I'm glad we were able to bury the hatchet.
That's actually really interesting, and I'm sure you found this at some point, Anthony, as well, because I remember when I'd moved house, I was living on 72 Pendle Drive. Right, and I was, and what was it? MMA? What was it called? MMA Live on ESPN. Right, I was like, oh, whoa! This is before any of the Fox stuff, and I was like, I fucking hate this guy. I was like, and this is back 2009, 13 years ago. You know, I was a lot younger. I was way more immature and hot-headed. If I ever see that motherfucker, I'm gonna fucking grab him by the fucking throat and make him answer some questions. Have you ever had that experience with anyone on TV and don't say me?
Yeah, I mean, there's not a day or show goes by, I think, where somebody isn't upset about something, right? Even if you take like the Power Slap League, okay, right? I have a lot of friends who are working on that show. Now, I can sit here and to your audience say I'm very surprised that the Nevada State Athletic Commission would sanction something that to me just looks like trauma and not martial arts, right? But if I publicly support that league, I got everybody coming after me, right? When I'm just trying to support my friends, you know? So yeah. I have much thicker skin than I did, obviously, back in the day. And, you know, obviously, we talked about my preparation earlier. You know, part of the reason why I take the job so seriously is maybe my fear of failure and not wanting to, you know, do wrong by a fighter in a public setting. But, yeah, I got a pretty expansive list of people that will be happy the day I retire.
That is, you just said something there, your fear of failure, John. And you know what? I think that's kind of what drives me, essentially. I think if you whittle it down to the actual core reason, it's a fear of failure, you know, in whatever capacity it is that you do in life. Do you resonate with that, Anthony?
I do, especially at work when I'm working the desk. There is nothing more terrifying to me right now than whether it be Dan Hellie or Karen Bryant or Megan O'Leary or John on a pay-per-view come to me with a question about a fighter that maybe if we went through the format, because John is we flow really well. So like some of the shit we talk about, we had no intention of talking about. Right. But if he wants to pull like the featured prelim, which typically, just to pull the curtain back a little bit, the fight before that, we almost never talk about. So,
Anthony, tell me about Gadji Umar Gadjanev or whatever.
Right. And like he hits you with some shit and you're like, I don't know anything about that guy, you know, like, or I'm not refreshed on it, or I haven't watched his last couple fights. Like, that is absolutely terrifying to me. Because one, I don't want to look like an idiot on TV. Two, I don't want Jon Anik to know that I wasn't prepared. Like because I know he is. He comes, he's got his notes, they're this tall and they're stacked, and he's rattling through them, and it's the energy is high, and we're all hype. I don't want to fuck all that up when it comes to me with a question about maybe someone that we weren't supposed to talk about. I want Jon Anik to know that he can just pull a fight from the card, and I'll have at least something on it. Maybe it'll be light, depending on how far up he wants to go. But yeah, so I do resonate with that, because I don't want to fuck it all up. I'm afraid of looking like an idiot, or I don't know. I guess letting down my coworkers.
Well, speaking of looking like an idiot, Harrington, what the fuck are you doing here? We're having three bros. We all work in the broadcasting side of things. We're talking about our fears. Okay, we're getting personal. You just fucking waltz on like you own the show. What do you want?
Well, I'd be honest, I would feel like a failure in my job if I didn't hit you with the breaking news that came out since we've started this show. Kelvin Gastelum is out of this weekend's main event, and he will be replaced by Sean Strickland. It'll be a 205-pound fight.
No way. Well, thank you, Harrington. And by the way,
205?
Hold on. By the way, Harrington, people always give me shit. They say I'm picking on Harrington. It's busting goddamn balls. Thank you. I know, isn't he?
A podcast and a radio, you destroy your producer. It's the way it goes.
Exactly. Wow. So, John, the way you had a smug little grin.
I was going to say the same thing, John.
You were privy to that information. I checked my email. Hold on. Is there anything from one Zach Candido? I'm sure there is.
4 years ago, I was added to a UFC internal email chain, and I get now fight announcements as they happen and cancellations as they happen. The reason I'm on that chain is obviously because I'm prepping oftentimes 10, 12 days out. I'm going to voice UFC 283, the Brazil pay-per-view, while I'm here in New Orleans here in a couple days, right? So I'm on that list so that I get that information so I don't voice a fight that's already been canceled. So, yes, that happened a couple hours ago.
So what's the deal with Gastelum?
Out. Why? The injury. I don't know what the injury is, but Nassourdine Imavov, who was to take part in his first UFC main event, is now fighting Sean.
Hey, fair play. Fair play to Strickland, because otherwise, there's some tremendous fights on that card, right? But without doubt, the biggest star on that fight card, of course, that's why he's in the main event, Kelvin Gastelum, right? One of the greatest fights we've seen with Israel Adesanya. Knocked me out. Bloody, he's had a tremendous career. For him to fall off that card could be absolutely disastrous. And I tell you, and Imavov has got to get credit as well for agreeing to step up to 205 on just a few days' notice, and Sean Strickland stepping in. Anthony.
That seems like a lateral movement to me. I don't think you lose anything there. If anything, I think you get a little bit of juice because it's new, and everything gets a little bit of a little gusto when it's brand new. Sean Strickland's been in 5 fights probably since he fought Jared Cannonier, so I'm sure he's in shape.
There's
no way that guy can go. Yeah, there's no way that he can't not. He cannot not train. It's just not possible. He's got too many screws loose. He's too crazy. I love Sean Strickland. He's a good guy, but that man has to train to keep everybody safe.
But dude, like for Imavov, right, he's going to be a 2-1 favorite against Kelvin Gastelum, right? And now all of a sudden he's probably going to be the underdog against Sean.
He was a 2-1 favorite over Gastelum.
It didn't open that big, but he was minus 205 at last.
Just remind me off the top of my head, Gastelum's recent form.
Well, that was the issue, right? So he was actually supposed to fight Imavov last April. KG didn't fight at all last year, right? He had the 2 main events against Whitaker and Cannonier at the end of 2021. Just had to pull out of a lot of fights, and then obviously this one during fight week. So not ideal for KG.
Gastelum, he's in a tough place, isn't it? Because he is so talented. He's so fast. Yes, Harrington, you're back again, no doubt. You got a little...
And he's young.
What is he, like 31 now? 32? Something like that?
Oh, shit.
So this is the picture that I'm finding on the internet when I Google Kelvin Gastelum injury. Rough.
Yeah, but maybe... Is that an old one, or is that new, Brian?
Well, that looks like a guy that can still fight.
I was just going to say, right? Yeah.
You just get a new mouthpiece made because you're missing a tooth, and you just go do the damn thing.
Yeah, one would have thought so. A lot of these hillbillies.
I mean, who am I to not like I've ever lost teeth in a fight before.
Yeah, exactly. Just put them to one side for the referee to hold for a while. All right, listen, we're going to do some questions, but Harrington, we went to Twitter, John, right? So I don't know what these are, and I don't know which ones Harrington's going to pick. Questions for one Jon Anik. So, Harrington, The floor is yours. The light is bright on your face. Not as bright as Anthony Smith was a minute ago. You were speaking about Blade. You looked like the Daywalker, bro. But you've drawn a curtain. Harrington, take it away, my friend.
All right. Yeah, sorry, my good camera's broken, so I'm making do with what I got. Nick Brugman.
And you're not coming through your microphone either.
Is it really?
It's
Oh, my goodness. This is a nightmare. So Nick Brugman would like to know. Sorry, I can't. I'm all disconnected here. Nick Brugman wants to know, he's a college student studying sports journalism right now. John, what was the biggest break you had getting into the business that you're in?
So I got on ESPN Radio, the national network, in 2006, and that was essentially what got me into Bristol, Connecticut. I was sort of a struggling radio guy in Boston, Massachusetts. I would literally come home from work, smoke a bowl, and send out demo tapes. Like, that's what I would do every day. And nobody would write me or call me back. And lo and behold, I got a call from the ESPN Radio national network in Bristol, Connecticut. And once I got in that building, I was able to migrate over to TV and eventually host MMA Live, which laid the foundation for this opportunity. But, I mean, a lot of my career is like better lucky than good, like right place, right time. Like, I happen to be the MMA guy at ESPN when the UFC was doubling its schedule from 20 to 40 shows. You know, there weren't that many guys. So, but yeah, biggest break for me, definitely Bristol, Connecticut, ESPN Radio and host.
So that was something, though, that you always wanted to do, because I know Brendan Fitzgerald speaks about it as well. You know, this was his dream. He always wanted to be a commentator or a sports broadcaster. Yeah. So you grew up with that passion and that desire?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to be a sports writer for the Boston Globe, and then I wanted to be on the radio. I never wanted to do television, ever. I wanted to work in sports, but I never wanted to do TV.
Anthony, and just on that note, I mean, Let me ask. I mean, because obviously you work on ESPN. You know, you're on the broadcast all the time, and so am I. It still blows my mind to this day. You know what I mean? Because I grew up. I left school at 16. I'm sure you have a kind of a similar story, Anthony. And it's certainly not a silver spoon. And yeah, here we are. Yes, my background. I'm retired as a fighter. You're still kicking ass, and hopefully you're going to get that belt soon. But also, we're working on TV, and sometimes I still have to pinch myself and go, "Wow! Not only do I work for the UFC." It's the #1 goddamn organization and probably the coolest sport on the goddamn planet. Do you ever think that sometimes, Anthony?
Every single time when someone says, "Oh well, hey, how'd you get that gig?" and I always think, "Fuck, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out." I've always credited Dan Hardy and Michael Bisping with launching my broadcasting career. Dan Hardy, it was the Shogun fight, I believe. Him and I got to rapping in our fighter meeting. He was calling the fights, and we just talked for like 30 minutes. No one else had even had an opportunity to ask any questions. And they were, "Guys, this is great, but we were talking about fights that were 5 years before and then 5 years in the future that we wanted to see." They added a 30-minute segment or a 30-minute like a Facebook Live thing to every single one of my media days after that for just Dan Hardy and I. From that kind of morphed into the Lion's Den on SiriusXM. Dan brought me on to SiriusXM, and then that turned into an opportunity to work the desk when John Jones fought Alexander Gustafsson the second time, when it moved from Vegas to Anaheim, I believe. And then I was fucking tanking the whole thing. I was doing terrible. I didn't know what a format was. I didn't know any of the lingo. I had no idea what layout meant or rap or what. I didn't know anything, but I was tanking in the rehearsal. And Michael Bisping said, "Hey, if you ever get stuck or you're feeling uncomfortable or you're lost, just look at me. I always have something to say." And just that kind of safety net and not feeling so, I guess, vulnerable while I was up there. Hell, I'm not sure if I ever did it or not. I don't remember, but that saved me a lot. And I can go back and watch it and see that, like, as the show went on, I got more and more comfortable, you know, even going back and forth with Mike. And so, yeah, no, I never thought that I was going to work on TV. I never thought I thought that I'd get punched in the face until I couldn't do it anymore and then have to go get a real job.
Hey, and Anthony, do you know how I know that story with you and Dan Hardy? And I just thought you'd like to know this. Obviously Zach is a very key player, he's the head of production. I know that story because Zach told me that story. You know what I mean? And how impressed he was and how everyone there, you know, the powers that be, shall we say, we're all so very impressed. So, yeah, I already knew that one. Harrington, what else we got for John?
Shimei wants to know, do you ever wake up in the middle of the night screaming, the fight clock is brought to you by Modelo?
All the time. All the time. It scares the hell out of my family. But it's funny because, I did get a sponsorship deal from Modelo. I'm wearing their shirt today, right? Just based on being the man on this earth who trotted out their tagline more than any other. And I can't tell you how many times on social media someone will go buy a P3 protein snack and all they want to do is send me a picture of it, And I do think a lot of people, they hear these advertisements in my voice and so they associate me with these products, So, yeah, no, hopefully I'm not scaring people in the middle of the night, but this fight card is brought to you by Modelo.
No,
There it goes.
Harrington, give us two more, and then we're going to go to the regular questions for the show that we'll finish off with. And thanks again, John, for your time. And Anthony, yeah, thanks, I guess.
Yeah, thanks.
Shut up late, but whatever, didn't do any research. It's fine.
All right, John. Big Bisping wants to know, who are your 3 favorite Boston athletes of all time?
So recently I had to come up with my list of the top 10 greatest Boston athletes of all time, which was a very difficult exercise. Number 1 all time is going to be Nomar Garciaparra, former Boston Red Sox shortstop. I was a big Antoine Walker fan growing up, employee number 8. I was a Celtics season ticket holder about 20 years ago. So I always begin the conversation with Nomar Garciaparra and Antoine Walker. And I guess I should probably name a New England Patriot, but I'm going to say Trot Nixon, another Boston Red Sox. It's a baseball town. I grew up a big baseball fan. And, I'll say Nomar Twan and Trotman Nixon as my 3rd favorite Boston athlete.
Well, I'm sorry to say that those names mean absolutely nothing to
What am I going to say, Kenny Florian or fucking...
No. Oh, my God, Kenny Florian, you could have done. But Anthony,
You could have done that.
Anthony, can you name 3 Boston athletes?
No.
Well, regardless of if they're your favorite or not, but just can you reel off 3 well-known athletes?
No, I'm not sure that I can. I'm not a big baseball guy, and I'm not a big basketball guy, so that kind of eliminates a large population of Boston athletes.
All right. Can you name 3 movies? And if you can't, John, we'll defer to you on this one. 3 movies set in Boston. Blockbusters. No, not for Anthony Smith, because the joke is he doesn't watch movies.
I don't, so I absolutely can't. Who knows where the hell a movie's made at? Or set it at, whatever.
You watch the movie.
I don't watch fucking movies.
And the fucking Boston.
I'm too busy fucking trying to win a world title here, Michael Bisping.
John,
A lot of
3
major
movies.
motion pictures have taken place in Boston. The Departed, The Town, Good Will Hunting. Candidly, though, I get a little bit exposed like Anthony Lionheart Smith, right, when it comes to some of the movies and the music and the pop culture, right? I've said repeatedly, when we show celebrities on pay-per-view, I'm always freaking out. I know the fighters, but I didn't, prep the actors that are going to be fucking sitting octagon side.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, I have no idea who they are. Harrington, one more, please.
All right. No love for Billy Miller, huh? Okay. Let's see. Who has the best... All right, this is a good final one. Who has the best hair in MMA commentary? Kenny Florian or Michael Bisping?
It was crazy when Bisping had that beard grown out in Bulgaria. It looks like you've trimmed it up a little bit. But Kenny Florian was born in May of 1976, and he does not have so much as a gray hair on him.
Really?
So as much as I love your glowing, that is, Michael, if this is a hair competition, Kenny Florian is top of the podium.
Without question.
Gray.
It's crazy. I was like, do you dye your beard? He's like, no, I don't quite get it either. It's black, it's auburn, but no white hairs at all.
But on top of being, and I'm assuming that's the head of hair as well, not just the beard. Yeah. On top of being a great guy, okay, first and foremost, tremendous at his job, amazing commentator, analyst, all the rest of it. The nicest guy you'll ever meet, very, very funny, which you don't really get to see Kenny go into that. He's hilarious, but he doesn't really, I don't know, he's very professional, you know what I mean?
Oh, he doesn't let it go. He doesn't let the comedy go as much as I'd like him to on our show.
But one of the most stylish motherfuckers that you'll meet as well.
Fashion forward.
I
No,
hate
he's married.
He's got it.
He's what I hate. He's got the great hair, the great beard.
He's married to a
Really awesome suit.
I've only got
I love his
Rebecca.
suit.
Yeah. Jesus Christ.
I wish we still had him. I wish we still had him with the UFC, though.
Oh, God, me too. Me too. All right, well, listen, John, you are the man. Anthony, you'll do. If you have questions for us, ladies and gentlemen, please do send them into bympod@gmail.com. The funnier, the more interesting, the more random, the better. Please, Harrington, over to you.
If you are listening to this on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you find podcasts, make sure you subscribe and you leave a 5-star rating, positive review. It helps out on those platforms. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the channel and you hit that notification bell to find out whenever a new episode comes out. And if you want to catch over 400 episodes ad-free and completely uncensored, head to gasdigitalnetwork.com. Use the promo code BYM, get a 7-day free trial. Check out over 20 great shows on the network.
All right, Brian, what do we have this week?
All right, boys. This time we have a question here from Hayden McCoy.
Ike Anthony, what's up, fellas? Big fan of the show. Never miss an episode. I've been doing jiu-jitsu for like 6 months now, and I'm getting ready for my first competition. So I was just wondering what kind of advice you guys had for white belts getting ready to compete in jiu-jitsu. So thanks.
Anthony, I'll let you go first because that's a tough one. Let me think of something intelligent.
No, I don't think this is an intelligent type of answer, Mike. I think as a white belt competing for the first time in jiu-jitsu, I think you need to go in with zero expectations because it's going to be totally different from whatever the hell you expect it's going to be. It's going to be different. It's going to be a lot of fun. I would urge you to not put too much pressure on yourself because jiu-jitsu competitions, especially as a white belt, don't matter. I love jiu-jitsu competitions because it's fun, exciting, intense competition with absolutely zero repercussions. It doesn't matter. Like if your name is Hodger Gracie or Gordon Ryan, people are keeping track of wins and losses. But if you're just a regular goddamn dude doing jiu-jitsu at your local gym and you're having a goddamn blast doing it and you fucking love it, doesn't really matter whether you win or you lose.
Well said, far more eloquently than I could put it, but you're absolutely right, and that's kind of what I was going to say. At the end of the day, why did you start doing jiu-jitsu? Probably a multitude of reasons, but one of them was for fun. And why you sign up to this competition? To test your progress. You're not necessarily going to win anything. You know, if you win the competition, you get a little trophy or a medal. That's beautiful, but it's not life-changing. So go out there and just do it for the reason that you wanted to do it, the reason why you signed up, the reason why you started jiu-jitsu. And realize, as Anthony said, you're in a white belt local jiu-jitsu tournament. It's a bit of fun. And what that will do will eradicate the fear, the pressure, the game day nerves that cripples and paralyzes a lot of people. But John, you talk about the fights all the time. You ever do any jiu-jitsu or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I took like 7 jiu-jitsu classes with Marcos D'Amata.
Yeah. Oh, what a guy.
West Palm Beach branch. So they didn't have a beginner's class in Coconut Creek. So I went to West Palm Beach. I didn't really like it. I fucking hated it, if being honest. I mean, I took boxing lessons for 2 years way back in the day. I was hosting the Mouthpiece Boxing radio show in Boston. Really enjoyed striking more than jiu-jitsu. I do think eventually jiu-jitsu will creep back into my life to some degree. I mean, Pahumpa's trying to get me to like man up my garage and come do privates. I'm starting to get the itch to do jiu-jitsu again, but at least right now, I'm not practicing any martial arts. I do strength and conditioning with Gilbert Burns' guy at the Institute of Human Performance once a week in South Florida. But right now, I'm hitting golf balls and not pads.
You in DC? That's all I hear about from DC. The bloody golf. It's like, I don't play it. He's like, Mike, come on, in Singapore. I'm like, I don't play golf. He's like, you can drink beer, you know. I'm like, yeah, I know, but I don't want to drink it on a fucking golf course. I'll drink it at a bar, or like most of the time, in my hotel room by myself, like a real sad, depressed person.
Like a real man.
Yeah, like a real man. Brian, do we have 2 more, please? And then I'm sure John's looking at the clock saying, Jesus Christ, I don't have this one.
Oh, we do. This next one is from Matt from Florida.
What's up, guys? This is Matt from Florida. I got 2 quick questions. One for Anthony Smith. If the UFC needed you, they were in dire straits. They needed you to fill in to fight Alexander Pereira, middleweight belt. I know you like 205. I think you said you'll never go back to 185, but if it played out like that, would you take the fight, and how do you think you do? And my other question is for, the gentleman, Mr. Bisping. Anthony Smith's given us an address to send free shit to. I've sent him multiple free things. What are you, too good, Michael? Too good to give out an address to get free shit from a bunch of people who make way less money than you? You're too good? The free shit?
Bro,
Well, I guess it is Anthony's fucking podcast, so. Thank you. Fuck you, Harrington. Have a good 2023.
Yeah, fuck you, Harrington, and fuck you as well. I didn't quite catch you there, Mr. Texas. Okay, first of all, John, the running joke is that it's now Anthony's podcast, which it is, even though I do all the fucking work. Secondly, do you think Anthony gave out his home address? No. Anthony, was that your home address that you gave out on the podcast?
No, it was the gym.
Yeah, exactly. And half of this shit behind here, people send to me. Figure it out. Because if you're a true fan, because there's some psychos. John, have you ever had this in Anthony? There is some people out there. I get loads of fan mail. I know that sounds douchey, but...
Yeah, I do too.
Look, let me retry it now. Occasionally, a letter arrives to me from an admirer of the sport. Loads of fan mail. No, but I do, and it creeps me out a little bit because it's like they've figured out, they've somehow found my personal address. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not overly comfortable with that.
I get fan mail all the time to my home address from as far away as Korea, actually, within the last 2 weeks. Yeah, and oftentimes I find myself wondering aloud, like, how do they get the home address so easily?
Very grateful, by the way. I hope that didn't come out wrong. Very, very grateful. But sometimes, you think, how the hell have they done that? And my mum probably didn't help because just recently she sent us a Christmas card, obviously with the address on. Put my phone number on the envelope as well. I'm like,
oh no.
I'm like, Mom, don't do that. Anthony, what was your question? I'm sorry, I forgot.
Oh, would I fight Alex Pereira? All right, John. Pereira or...
So the way you just said it is acceptable, right? So there are a lot of people who just can't roll the R,
I can't either.
The whole key is there's no H in there. Both of the R's are hard. Pereira or Pereira, Pereira. But it's not Pereira, there's no H sound. It's Pereira or Pereira.
But can I ask a question, John? And I'm not trying to be funny or anything like that. But, so like, some people announce certain words a certain way because they have an accent, right? But if I'm not from that country, like Pereira or Barcelona, right? Do you know what I mean? Paul Krieg. Right, I'm not Scottish, so I'm not saying
Paul Krieg,
right? Like, do you understand what I mean? I mean, where do you draw the line? Because it's a tricky one. Because, like, let's just say, and this is a very, very, very extreme circumstance. If somebody was from China, we wouldn't say it like that because I would be called racist.
No, I mean, and honestly,
you understand what I mean?
No, we're trying to draw the line.
Trivialize it. I'm like, but where do you say? So sorry, John, I'll let you talk.
Right. We opened up a can even just by having all the fighters say their name to tape, right? Because a lot of those audio files are open to interpretation. But I'll tell you one very quick story. The Boston Red Sox back in the day signed a pitcher from Japan, very famous acquisition. His name was Daisuke Matsuzaka. I'm working at ESPN Radio at the time, and our process was to Americanize Japanese names. So the first time I said that player's name on the radio, I said Daisuke. The Boston Red Sox ended up issuing a press release. They said, I know you guys have your processes, but he's fucking Daisuke. Stop calling him Daisuke, But there are a lot of Japanese athletes who are named Daisuke who are called Daisuke by announcers around the world. So we try to get it as close as we can, knowing full well that there are going to be certain regionalisms and certain accents that you just can't, mimic.
And you wouldn't call him Dusaki because in my very childish brain, I just want to say, suck daiki.
I know.
Do you know what I mean? It sounds too much like suck dick. Okay?
As long as you're emphasizing the right syllable.
Yeah.
All right, I got one question for John. I'm just adding all sorts of shit. I could sit here and just ask John questions all day long. This is one argument we get in every single time he fights. Kennedy
and Nzechukwu.
Yeah. Fuck yeah.
But again, this is one, you both nailed it, but this is a guy whose file lacked clarity, so I actually...
I already said it like 2 or 3 different ways.
The other one being Nzechukwu.
Exactly.
Yes.
So I sat down with him once, and I was like, hey, Kennedy and Nzechukwu? And he's like, oh, that's beautiful. I was like, was it right? I mean, because you said it 3 different ways on the fucking file, So yes, Nzechukwu.
That's funny. He's like, oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. All right, Brian, give us a final question, please, my friend.
All right, we got one here from a Mr. Kyler. He didn't say where he was from.
All right, Brian, please leave this one on until Anthony comes on. All right, got a question and a statement. Question: I have trouble eating a lot before bedtime, and I wonder if you guys struggle from the same thing. I don't remember you guys talking about it, but cutting weight, and I just wonder if you struggle from the same thing. And my statement, Bisping, you talk a lot about going to see Anthony in Arkansas, but I think it would actually be really good for you and your family to go visit them, because it's like a different way of life, the way they live, and it's kind of similar to Canada. And honestly, Bisping, you guys have been talking a lot about life short and all these other things in the podcast lately, and it just keeps making me think like you guys would be such stronger friends if you actually hung out, and you guys really need to go do that. And Harrington, congratulations on the baby. You guys have a great year. Keep up the great things on the pod. I love it, boys.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Or the possibilities that I go hang out with Anthony and we hate each other and we have no podcast. So you never thought that through. There is different eventualities. What did he ask? What was food, right? Was he talking about eating too much right before bed?
I think
that's what he meant.
I think so.
Yeah, that's what he asked.
So, John, for people who don't know this, you're an avid runner, right? You work out a lot. I mean, look, you're in great shape. You're always lean. You know, do you want to answer that question? I mean, what is your nighttime eating regimen?
Well, obviously my relationship with cannabis sometimes complicates things in terms of the munchies a little bit. But generally speaking, when I'm in a non-fight week, I'm not too worried about the clock with my eating. I have a lot of intermittent fasting that just happens naturally. Most of the cardio I do at home is fasted cardio. So I usually take like a 14-hour gap from the last thing I ingest at night, because I don't eat breakfast a lot. But certainly like during a UFC fight week, because my suits are pretty tight and my weight does fluctuate, that I eat a lot cleaner during like a pay-per-view week. And for a lot of us on the UFC Roadshow, it's actually reversed, right? They eat cleaner at home and then they eat like shit on the road. Whereas for me, it's like I let myself go a little bit at home, and then when I'm on the road, I try to be clean.
Anthony?
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I'm fairly clean when I'm not at home. Especially if I'm in camp, I'm fairly clean. But when I get on the road, that's a fucking wrap. It's DoorDash, Uber Eats, Drizzly delivering vodka and ginger beer. It's ugly.
Yeah. I mean, I've talked about this a bunch of times, so I don't want to go on about it too long. But having said that, we're working in Perth, Australia soon. When we go to Perth, it's the middle of summer. You know what I mean? It's tops off. We're going to be at the beach. People are at the pool, at the hotel. I don't want to be that former world champion that's walking around, not taking my shirt off at the pool because I'm too embarrassed, because everyone's like, oh, you put a few pounds on there, champ, have you? Because the reality is, yeah, I've put a few fucking pounds on, okay? But I'm on it like a car bonnet, right? I mean, I'm losing a little bit. I was 231. 226 this morning, Anthony, from Thursday to Monday. By the time we get to Perth, I'm going to be fucking doing that pay-per-view topless with a tie around my neck, a microphone, ready to fucking rock.
Are you still not drinking?
Not drinking. That's the big
Since
one.
when? Since when?
Right, so.
Okay. Okay.
No, this is true. My new year just started, because Lucas went back to school today, and Rebecca is she's enjoying the break. She's up at 5:30 or 6 a.m. every day, right? Because Lucas does what they call zero period. He starts super early, so he finishes early. That was his crazy choice. So she's like, no, I'm not setting an alarm. I'm enjoying this time. So I'm like, all right. So my new year started yesterday. Okay. So it's been 2 days.
You have to start somewhere, Mike.
But I'm not drinking. I'm done. I'm over it. And I know all the believers have heard me say this a million times. No. I've been listening to a lot of podcasts, right? Because alcohol has been a negative influence in my life, and I'm sick of it. And I'm sick of feeling like shit in the morning. And I'm sick of putting on weight. And I'm sick of trying to constantly counteract the negative impacts of it. Do you know what I mean? By having to run and diet and all the rest of it. I could just not drink. And then we all fall into this trap of where it's in a social setting. I guess it's almost addictive where, oh, you have a drink. You don't have to have a drink, and that was my mind. And I was kind of brainwashed like that, or formatted from growing up in the north of England. It's my excuse anyway. Oh, my dad kicking the fuck out of me every day, one or the other. But still, we're done in many ways, in every way, in all but one way, John. That's the end of the show.
Can I just real quick, just want to jump in here. If they do want to send you stuff, 151 First Avenue, New York, box 311, zip code 10003, Gas Digital Network, care of Michael Bisping. We'll get it.
Thank you very much, Howard, because I want some bits and bobs. John, do you have bits and bobs on the Anik Florian podcast? And by bits and bobs, we mean just random things in the background?
Yes, we do. Not as extensive as the bits and bobs here on Believe You May, but
Well, we're known for our bits and bobs. But that's
boxes are pretty expensive if you try to get one on your own. I did look into it. It was $2,000.
for what?
Shit,
I
really?
mean, it's a P.O. box, right? If you wanted to have a place, because I don't live in Las Vegas, right? So oftentimes I'll give the UFC headquarter address, but
See, I'd rather buy the bits and bobs than thousands of dollars. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the show. Big thank you to Jon Anik, of course, Anthony Smith, Harrington, and Brian. See you on Thursday with Leon Rocky Edwards and Paul Craig.